Chapter 121. In the next month, Ryan and Hermione spent 2 or 3 days every week in the laboratory to practice potion preparation. The prepared potions are sold through Ryan's shop in Diagon Alley. The manager of the store is Kiki, the third of the 3 brothers. At the same time, the medicines in the small group of Kess and Beaver will also be sold through Ryan's shop, and Ryan will take a 10% commission from the sales. It can be regarded as a small reward from Ryan to Wana. After all, Ryan can now drink the tea made by Hermione in the afternoon. In addition, Ryan would sell a bottle of potion refined by Snape to the outside world every 2 or 3 weeks. He had a lot of this. He had seized a lot from high-level wizards before, and since he was able to refine potions, he might as well keep this tasteless potion for others to enjoy. Just keep 1 or 2 bottles for yourself for emergency use. In addition to selling potions, the store also purchases some extremely rare herbs. Although no one has sold them so far, as long as they are available, Ryan believes that he will receive them one day. Perhaps because Ryan hid the diary in his pocket, life in the 2nd grade seemed to be much calmer, and no messy things happened. Except for the daily quarrels between Malfoy and Mr. Savior. It wasn't until October 15 that Ryan realized how powerful the power of fate was. At noon this day, Ryan was walking alone in the corridor. Hermione went to learn tea art with Wana, and the little wizards were resting in their dormitories. The corridor was empty at this time. Ryan walked slowly down the corridor. He needed to go to the laboratory to install the newly purchased medicine cabinet, the trash can with the disappearing spell, and of course a test bench covered with dragon skin. These were custom made at a huge cost to Ryan. Just as Ryan turned into the corridor leading to the laboratory, Ryan suddenly became alert. Flash! Without hesitation, Ryan left his original position in an instant. However, nothing happened, but Ryan clearly felt that the surrounding atmosphere was becoming somewhat solemn. Who would target me, Malfoy? Impossible, unless his brain is broken. Ryan looked around warily and murmured, then who is it? Magic vision. No matter who it is, there is always magic power in the body. If you open the magic vision and take a look, you will know everything. The whole world suddenly changed in Ryan's eyes. Suddenly, there were a few more blue lines on the oil painting hiding the keyhole, and there were light spots swimming on it. This is the magic line and the flow of magic. The direction in which the light point swims is the direction of the flow of magic. That's not right. Ryan glanced at the statue, and there was nothing wrong with it. Everything around him seemed normal, exactly the same as the magic lines that Ryan saw when he first came to this classroom. No, there's still the top of the head. Ryan raised his head and looked towards the ceiling. The entire ceiling no longer had its former glory, and the exquisite murals were now covered in a layer of rich blue light. Flash flash! Ryan's 2 consecutive flashes directly left the range covered by the blue light on the ceiling. When the huge magic source saw Ryan leaving, he didn't act rashly. He still stayed where he was, seemingly very patient. After waiting for a while, Ryan became impatient. Lunch break is about to pass, and even though this is a remote corner on the 5th floor, if there is any movement, someone will definitely notice it immediately. And it's obvious that this unknown creature is coming for him, and he is always with Hermione. If he doesn't solve it now when Hermione is not around, why not wait to solve it when Hermione is around? So Ryan didn't want to wait at all, and directly fired a mental blast. This is a spell that can cause damage to the soul. Unlike other spells, it can directly affect the soul regardless of being unable to block it. Soon, Ryan saw that the rich blue light began to fluctuate, like a stone breaking the tranquility of the water. It can be seen from the violent fluctuations of light that this unknown creature is not feeling well at this time. Ryan expected that this mental blast would anger it and make it come out to fight him. Ryan was never afraid of a head-on confrontation, but he had to be constantly on guard against possible attacks, which was really tiring, and might even implicate Hermione. The unknown creature seemed to sense Ryan's thoughts and emerged from a small pipe next to the ceiling. In Ryan's magic vision, the blue color instantly shrank into a thin line and emerged from the pipe. A small emerald green snake fell from the ceiling, rolling on the ground constantly, and occasionally letting out a roar or two of a ferocious beast. As if sensing the changes in space, the snake continued to grow in size in Ryan's eyes until it filled the entire space. Damn it! Ryan closed his eyes immediately and turned on his magic perception to prevent himself from staring into the eyes of the basilisk and causing death. Ryan had too many questions in his mind at this time. He had obviously hidden the notebook in his pocket, so how could the basilisk still come out? Dimensional blade. An invisible blade sliced through the air without causing a trace, and then landed on the basilisk's body, easily cutting off a large piece of flesh. Blood sprayed out from the basilisk's body and fell to the ground with a shishi sound. Under the pain, the basilisk rolled even more violently. Ryan raised his hand again, wanting to use another dimensional blade to directly end the life of the basilisk, but the basilisk suddenly stopped rolling, shrank in size, and got into the hydrophobic water from an inconspicuous little corner next to it. Pipeline. The dimensional blade was launched from Ryan's hand and struck the wall, easily cutting through a corner of the wall. Damn it! Ryan cursed angrily, opened his eyes and looked at everything in front of him, feeling a little angry. The first dimensional blade shot was actually aimed at the basilisk's 7 inches, but Ryan was not familiar with the world under magic perception, so he missed it. The voices of the little wizards could be heard upstairs. After hearing it, Ryan put the basilisk's flesh and blood into his space bag, and then used a repair spell to restore the appearance of the corridor. Then, he entered the laboratory with a gloomy look. Ryan needs to confirm the authenticity of the notebook. After entering the laboratory, Ryan took out the notebook directly without paying attention to the things he bought on the counter. In order to ensure that the notebook would not slip away on its own, Ryan specially packed it in a box with a sealing spell. After Ryan opened the seal on the box, he revealed the diary inside. Chapter 122. The diary in the box was placed firmly inside, and there was nothing strange about it. Ryan took it out of the box, spread it out on the table, and wrote on it, "Hello. Come again?" The remnant spirit of Voldemort thought depressedly in his notebook. Ryan also asked the same question last time, and after he replied, Ryan immediately closed the diary and locked it in the box. It took such a long time to take it out. Do you know how he spent this time? Every day I could only look at the pitch black outside, without even a ghost to speak. This was Voldemort when he was still studying at Hogwarts, and his character had not yet been twisted to that extent. So facing such a claustrophobic environment, Voldemort was actually feeling a little trembling at this time. This is the same as confinement. Even the strongest warrior will be afraid of confinement, let alone Voldemort who is still in school, even if he has killed one person. Little Tom hid in his diary thinking about how to answer this sentence. He had never had contact with Ryan before and could not figure out Ryan's character at all. But this time I won't reply with a hello like last time. He didn't want to be locked into a box with a snap again. Ryan looked at the diary that had not been replied to for a long time, and his face became more and more ugly. He really couldn't figure out who had such a great ability to avoid his perception, get into the seamless stretch bag on his waist, and open it. The sealed box replaces the diary. At the same time, the integrity of the seal must be ensured. Not to mention other things, he learned this sealing technique from the Book of All Laws. There is no way anyone in this world can know it. Ryan waited another 2 minutes, and now he gave up completely. It can only be said that the power of fate is so powerful that he cannot resist it. Just when Ryan was about to close the diary, a line of words suddenly appeared. Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to know the truth about the world? Want to? Snapped. The diary was once again closed ruthlessly by Ryan, placed in a box, sealed with a sealing technique, and placed in his own traceless stretch bag. Damn, the notebook is real, so who released this monster? Ryan was sitting next to the console, his expression a little ugly. Trying to investigate a hidden soul in this magical castle is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Ryan. Hermione's voice rang in Ryan's ears, waking up Ryan who was thinking about where did Voldemort's remnant soul come from. Hermione, are you going to have class so soon? Ryan looked at Hermione and showed an ugly smile. He really couldn't figure out how the basilisk came out. Yeah, hurry up, or you won't catch up. Hermione was a little anxious. This afternoon is defense against the dark arts class, and that naughty guy Lockhart will take roll call in every class, giving you no chance to skip class. Once you skip class, Lockhart will punish you by going to his office to help him reply to fans. This was great practical experience from the Weasley twins, who had already helped Lockhart out on several occasions. Ah, then I don't think it's a big problem. When Professor Lockhart asks you why you didn't come to class, you only need to say, I was fascinated by your books and lost track of time. I hope you are as wise as you can give me some help. One chance to make things right. That's it. I believe Professor Lockhart will be moved by you. Although Ryan was still joking at this moment, Hermione could clearly feel that Ryan was still worried about something. "Hermione, do you still have the pendant I gave you?" Ryan said suddenly, which made Hermione stunned for a moment. But Hermione quickly realized that Ryan was talking about the pendant given to him for Christmas. "Of course, I always wear it." Hermione's face was a little blushing, and the little girl lowered her head and said shyly. "Hermione, remember, don't take it off, Hogwarts is no longer safe." Ryan said seriously. But he was also thinking about whether he should deal with the basilisk. He could only be a thief for 1,000 days, and there was no way to prevent a thief for 1,000 days. It was obvious that the basilisk's first target was him, otherwise he wouldn't have waited for him at the entrance of the laboratory on the 5th floor. It was very remote and few people would go there. Is something going to happen again? Hermione's senses were very keen. In addition, Ryan had told her about Voldemort before, and the little girl quickly associated the two things together. Is that person? Hermione didn't dare to call Voldemort by his name anymore. Ryan nodded and didn't say much. But Ryan, can't you even do anything about it? From Hermione's point of view, if even Ryan can't solve the problem, then there is a high probability that the problem can only be solved by waiting for the principal to take action. No, it's just that it's hiding very deep and I can't find it. Ryan shook his head. You must also pay attention to safety these days. The basilisk controlled by Voldemort has already found me once. You are the closest to me. Man, I'm afraid it's going to get you next time. What? Hermione yelled. When the little girl heard the closest person, her face turned red and it seemed like blood would drip from her eyes in the next second. However, she quickly realized that the basilisk had already approached Ryan once. Are you okay? Hermione asked with concern. No, instead the basilisk was seriously injured. Because of the basilisk's eyes, I could only fight it with my eyes closed, which caused my spell release to be a little off, otherwise I would have been able to kill it. Ryan's words were filled with emotion. Full of regret. Hermione curled her lips. She had read an introduction in the library. An adult basilisk could easily kill 3 or 4 adult wizards. It was a powerful magical creature. And what did Ryan say just now? I almost killed it with my eyes closed, but in the end it was my own mistake that allowed the basilisk to slip away. Hermione didn't know what to say at this time. She opened her mouth and closed it again. She really didn't want to pay attention to this guy who talks so much about Versailles. Ha ha ha, Miss Granger, Mr. Zell, I know you are discussing the knowledge in my books, but I think you can come to my class and listen to me. To be honest, I have prepared for this class. It will definitely open your eyes for a long time. A cheerful voice sounded behind the two of them. When Ryan and Hermione turned around, they saw Lockhart's iconic big white teeth. Sorry, Professor. Ryan and Hermione quickly admitted their mistake and sat down in the classroom. Lockhart always comes in a pinch, so if you meet Lockhart, it means you are almost late. Chapter 123. Lockhart strode into the classroom, looked at the little wizard below, showed his signature smile, and received a wave of admiration from the little witch. I know that you are all doubting my strength after the last class, so today I will let you see my true power. I will restore the scenes during my adventure for you, so that you can have a good experience see those dangerous situations. Lockhart said with a smile to the little wizard below. Professor, are you in this classroom? A little witch below raised her hand and asked, looking a little worried. Yes, that's right, my good girl. Lockhart winked at the little witch who spoke, and the little witch's face turned rosy. But, Professor, isn't this very dangerous? The little witch stuttered, and it was obvious that Lockhart's smile was quite damaging to the little witch. In fact, the little witch thought that Lockhart wanted to release real magical creatures recorded in the book in the classroom, such as the trolls in Walking with Trolls, so the little witch asked this question. Ha ha ha, don't worry, I'm here, I know a lot about how to deal with these monsters. Lockhart said with a smile, as if he had everything under control. The little wizards in the audience also gave Lockhart a burst of exclamations at the right time, satisfying Lockhart's desire to perform. But whether these exclamations are booing or sincere praise is a matter of debate. Of course, I also need an assistant to help me complete this task. Lockhart glanced below, trying to find an honest-looking young wizard to complete this scene. Granger? Lockhart saw Hermione sitting with Ryan and shook his head. Judging from Hermione's performance in the last class, Lockhart is really afraid that it is not impossible for Hermione to cast a petrification spell on him during the performance. so ignore it decisively. Zell? Lockhart hesitated, then ignored it. I heard that he has a good relationship with Snape, so it's better not to look for him. Potter? Lockhart looked at Harry. This is a good choice. Lockhart believes that if Harry is chosen, the headline tomorrow will be the performance between him and Potter. But the moment Lockhart saw Neville, he realized that this was the best choice. Mr. Longbottom, can you be my assistant? Lockhart smiled at Neville, looking very bright. Neville had kept his head down, not daring to look at Lockhart, just to avoid being called out by Lockhart. But unexpectedly, Lockhart still clicked on him. Teach, Professor, I may not be qualified. Neville stood up and said softly. Seamus can testify to this, because as Neville's seatmate, he couldn't even hear what Neville was saying. What? Lockhart watched Neville's lips move, but didn't hear Neville speak, so he asked subconsciously. Okay, buddy, come on up. Please trust my skills, I will give you an unforgettable lesson. Lockhart said, waving to Neville. Neville was even more frightened when he heard what Lockhart said. He slowly walked out of his seat and walked towards the podium with small steps. But Lockhart suddenly took a step forward and pulled Neville to the podium. Okay, children, now I will lead you into the plot described in my book. Please take out the book Walking with Trolls and turn to page 127. Lockhart raised a book on the podium. The portrait of Lockhart on the cover smiled at the little wizards, showing his white teeth. The little wizards found this book from the pile of books in front of them and spread it out on the table. However, no one wanted to read the book at the moment. Everyone was staring at Lockhart. Okay, Mr. Longbottom, please stand over here and pretend that you are a troll. Remember to show some of the troll's signature moves. Neville followed Lockhart's instructions, moving his body bit by bit until Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. Look, children, I subdued the trolls so easily that day. Lockhart raised his wand, pointed it at Neville, and muttered something. Of course, the spell I use is my own creation and I cannot teach it to you. But I can promise you that if any of you can get an O in the final exam, then I will consider it. Lockhart said. Holding the wand, he turned his head and said to the little wizard in the audience. However, his wand accidentally poked Neville and touched Neville's ticklish flesh. Neville suddenly started dancing, which is a normal reaction of the human body. But Lockhart didn't pay attention. He was still bragging about his adventures to the little witches below, completely unaware of Neville's actions. Snapped. A crisp sound interrupted Lockhart's story. It turned out that Neville accidentally reached Lockhart with his wave, and Lockhart fell to the ground. Lockhart's wand came out of his hand again and flew out of the window. Damn it! Lockhart cursed. But he quickly realized something was wrong and quickly remedied. I mean, this kind of situation is also very common. You know, in wild adventures, anything can happen, so we must not take it lightly. Of course, this time is just to set an example for you, but I would not do this in my usual adventures. After all, I have walked with trolls and vampires. Lockhart kept bragging about his greatness on the podium, while Neville was trembling on the side. He was praying that Lockhart would not complain to Professor McGonagall. Well. Ryan heard Hermione sigh deeply. I finally understand why you are so worried. Hermione leaned slightly and whispered. What? If this continues, I suspect that this generation of young wizards may not even be able to use the most basic Expelliarmus, let alone that there is a basilisk in the castle. Hermione said worriedly. Okay, you just need to know about this, don't talk about it casually. Ryan said. He didn't want to make it known to everyone yet, lest Voldemort's remnant soul be destroyed. Okay, kids, that's it for our class. I can see that you all like my class. We'll see you next week. With that, Lockhart ran outside the classroom to find his wand. The little wizards at Hogwarts once again saw Professor Lockhart looking for his wand in the grass downstairs. Chapter 124. It was October 31st, and it was raining heavily outside, but it did not affect the happy mood of the little wizards at all. Since the morning, the house elves have been busy because there will be a grand banquet tonight. Last year, the entire banquet was interrupted halfway through due to the appearance of a troll. The house elves were also helpless. They had prepared a lot for the banquet, but they didn't expect that the banquet was suddenly terminated. Fortunately, each college continued the banquet in its own common room, so the efforts of the elves did not go to waste. All day today, the little wizards were not in the mood to listen to the lectures, and all their thoughts were focused on tonight's banquet. Especially the little wizards in 2nd and 1st grade. The little wizard in 2nd grade hopes that this year will be safe because a troll came last year. The 1st grade wizard hopes to have another troll like last year. In their opinion, this is something they can brag about with their families at Christmas. The professors who had classes today also noticed that the little wizards below were a little absent-minded. Of course, at this time of year, the little wizards would be absent-minded. So every year on this day, as long as there is class, the professors will let the students study by themselves. Except for Professor Binns, the old professors don't care whether they listen to his class or not. The decoration in the restaurant has changed, with a huge pumpkin head floating in the air, white candles burning inside, and 2 or 3 bats flying out of it from time to time. The 1st grade wizards looked at all this with curiosity. This was a scene they had never seen before. The freshmen sat at the dining table, curiously looking at everything around them, and occasionally chatting with their friends. Of course, there is also a little wizard who is constantly taking pictures with a camera. When he meets people by the way, he will ask, "Do you know where Mr. Potter has gone?" Colin Creevy, a Harry Potter fan. "What are you looking at?" "Ryan." Kess's voice sounded in Ryan's ears. "Nothing." Ryan looked back at Colin. In the original book, both the Reeves brothers died fighting the Death Eaters. "I hope today is a good day, I don't want another troll to come." "Hell, you know, many freshmen are praying to Merlin, hoping that a troll will come today." Kess said a little depressed. He picked up the kettle on the table and wanted to pour himself a glass of water, but the kettle was empty. "This is really too bad. I don't want another giant monster to come today." They don't know the danger of the giant monster at all. The calves always dream of killing tigers. What's more, they are not even cows now, at most they are nothing. "A sheep." Kess shook his head. Ryan and Kess kept talking. After a while, Beaver came too, followed closely by Wana. But when Wana came in, she didn't even look at Beaver and sat directly next to her friend. This is also the norm for Wana and Beaver. They don't dare to get too close to each other in public places to prevent others from gossiping. About 10 minutes later, various professors appeared at the faculty table. Professor Dumbledore stood up and began to deliver a speech. "Ha, Mr. Xavier is not here." Malfoy's voice sounded next to him, which attracted Ryan's attention. Ever since the rift between him and Malfoy, Malfoy had always been far away from him, but today was a bit unusual. However, after Malfoy noticed that Ryan was paying attention to him, he immediately shrank down, stopped being arrogant, and just talked to Goyle and Crabbe beside him. Professor Dumbledore's speech is still so simple and concise, perhaps this is why most young wizards like him. For students, if the principal's speech can be so simple and clear, he is simply the best principal in this life. Then it was time for a pleasant meal. The originally quiet atmosphere in the restaurant instantly broke and became lively. All kinds of food and even some magical creatures suddenly appeared on the golden plates on the dining table. Hogwarts is backed by the Forbidden Forest and the Black Lake, which are rich in species and ecologically diverse. If you want to eat anything, just go inside and find it. The house elves spent 3 days running around the Forbidden Forest for this banquet. The little wizards couldn't wait to pick up their knives and forks and enjoy this sumptuous dinner. With a lot of inventory in their stomachs, the freshmen began to chase their seniors and ask them about last year's Halloween and the upcoming Quidditch match. When it comes to Quidditch, one person cannot be ignored, and that is Harry Potter. So soon, someone discovered that Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley were not dining in the restaurant, and they started asking the people around them. Later, this matter was known to all the little wizards. Until the end of the dinner, no one knew where Harry Potter had gone. Colin looked disappointed, as did the young wizards who admired Harry Potter. "Ha, it's such a peaceful day. If you ask me, the expectations of those freshmen have been disappointed, this Christmas is really peaceful. If you ask me, what's wrong with being a little calmer? After enjoying a grand banquet, then return to the dormitory, take a good bath and sleep comfortably, this is the right way to spend the festival," Kess said while picking his teeth next to him. "Kiss, you know, you are just like the supporting characters in the novels on the market that promote the development of the plot," Ryan said. "No, I don't think it's possible. Last semester, it was because of Professor Quirrell's mischief that the trolls broke into Hogwarts. This year's Professor Lockhart, haha." Kesby smiled without a smile. "Twice, everyone can see the disdain." Beaver nodded beside him. Lockhart looked like a coward. He really didn't have the guts to let the troll in, nor did he have the strength. This was tested by the Weasley twins. Although Lockhart later explained that he saw it, he wanted to play with the Weasley brothers and did not reveal it. But anyone with a discerning eye can see that Lockhart is trying to defend himself. After dinner, the little wizards began to return to their college lounges under the leadership of their prefects. Only at the beginning of school and Halloween would there be a grand occasion for everyone to go back to the dormitory together. Usually they would be free to move around after eating. The young wizards from the 4 colleges came out of the restaurant in a grand manner and began to walk towards the stairs. 2 colleges go up and 2 colleges go down. However, just after turning a corner, everyone saw something incredible. Filch's precious cat, Mrs. Norris, was hung stiffly on the wall, looking as if she was dead. Standing next to him was Harry, who had mysteriously disappeared tonight. Chapter 125. Damn it, you actually killed it. Filch's screams rang out in the silent corridor. He savagely pushed away the little wizard blocking him, rushed to Harry's side, and held Harry tightly. Wrist. Let's go find Dumbledore. I must ask for an explanation. Filch's face was covered with tears and snot, but he ignored it at this time and kept pulling on Harry, trying to take him away. Go to the principal's office. No, I didn't, it was like this when I came here. Harry began to resist. It would be really hard to explain if he just confessed like this in front of so many people. Besides, this was not his doing in the first place. Don't make excuses. Apart from you, I can't think of anyone else who would be so cruel. I don't want to listen to your excuses. Everything will come to light when we get in front of Dumbledore. At this time, Filch had been dazzled by Mrs. Norris's death and would not listen to anyone. He just wanted to catch the murderer who had been staying at the scene of the crime in front of Dumbledore and let him accept the trial well. The little wizards also started chattering. One person's voice may be small, but when the voices of so many little wizards are added together, the entire corridor becomes buzzing. Please be quiet. Dumbledore's voice floated over the corridor, easily suppressing the voices of the young wizards. After finishing his dinner, he was about to go back to the principal's office to drink a cup of black tea, but when he walked out of the restaurant, he saw that the little wizards were still here and were still talking about something. Out of curiosity, he walked over here, but overheard discussions about Harry Potter killing Filch's cat. Filch, please calm down first. Looking at the embarrassed Filch, Dumbledore comforted him. Mr. Headmaster, he killed my cat. Filch dragged Harry to Dumbledore and said viciously. Dumbledore frowned, looking a little displeased at Filch's rough movements. Then, he looked at the little wizards gathered around him. Filch, follow me, along with Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley. Dumbledore stepped forward, removed Mrs. Norris from the wall, and then said to Harry. Okay, Prefect, take the students back to their dormitories immediately. Dumbledore ordered again. Slytherin, follow me this way. Gryffindor, this way. Suddenly, the prefects of the 4 colleges shouted and gathered the students from their own colleges. Hell, if you hadn't taken a divination class, I would have doubted whether you knew how to divination. Kess looked at Ryan strangely, his tone full of curiosity. Ryan smiled mysteriously and did not answer Kess. I'm already tired enough from practicing magic. It's hard for me to have a good rest even after a holiday. It's really hard for me. Kess complained. By the way, do you think it was Mr. Potter who did it? Kess asked quietly. But it wouldn't be a problem if he didn't ask quietly, because now all the little wizards were talking about it. Impossible. Although Mrs. Norris looks dead, she is not actually dead. She is just petrified. This requires extremely powerful black magic. Although Mr. Potter is the savior, with all due respect, his strength is not meets the criteria. Ryan shrugged. Then what do you think caused it? Basilisk. Ryan decided to give Dumbledore some hints. How do you know? Hearing Ryan's firm answer, Kess was a little confused. The basilisk is a magical creature that is prohibited from being raised, and this is Hogwarts. I absolutely don't believe that Professor Dumbledore allowed one to be kept. Such powerful and dangerous magical creatures roam Hogwarts. This is a castle that has been passed down for thousands of years, and it hasn't even been 100 years since Professor Dumbledore took over as principal. Kess nodded, taking Ryan's words to heart, but didn't completely believe it. As the leader of an organization, it is unqualified to believe whatever others say, even if the opposite person is a powerful wizard. However, Ryan was too young and didn't have much reputation. If Dumbledore said it was a basilisk, then Chris would definitely believe it. Ryan looked at X, and he also noticed this situation. But he doesn't care, isn't it just to gain reputation? Isn't that easy? As Voldemort is about to return, there shouldn't be too many ways to gain reputation. While Ryan and Kes were talking, the team arrived in front of the Slytherin lounge. After the leading prefect said the command, everyone filed into the Slytherin lounge. The freshmen got their wish and had some fun at the Halloween dinner, and were gathering together to discuss it. And Malfoy also recounted his experience with the trolls last year. Some of the old students were also talking in the common room, and some returned to their dormitories, but Ryan believed that they must also be discussing this topic. After all, this was an incident in which Mr. Savior killed Filch's cat, and the little wizards of Slytherin didn't like it no matter which side they were on. And now that the enemy is in bad luck, when will he be happy if he is not happy? After arriving at his dormitory, Ryan took out the meat that he had previously cut from the basilisk. He wanted to study the snake meat and see if he could find a way to track it. It is not a wise choice to put your destiny in the hands of others. If possible, Ryan would rather kill the basilisk now. But the strange thing is that no matter how hard Ryan keeps track, he can't sense the slightest breath of the basilisk. This is impossible. Ryan was a little discouraged. He used tracking spells, guidance spells, smell amplification spells, and even drank a little blessing elixir, but without exception, they all failed. Is this the power of fate? Or is it because Salazar Slytherin's magic is too powerful? Or is there some kind of spell cast on that secret room? Ryan frowned, sitting on his chair and thinking. Then we can only strengthen the defense first. Ryan thought of it and began to make defensive alchemy items. At least Hermione needs to be protected, and Chris, Beaver, and Juana also need one or two. After all, they are already friends recognized by Ryan. Cuckoo! A hoot of an owl interrupted Ryan's work, but fortunately, no irreversible damage was caused. Pace? Is there any letter for me? As he spoke, Ryan took a note from Pace's mouth. It was written by Hermione, and the two of them often used Pace to pass small notes, which made Ryan feel a little like he was in high school. Chapter 126. Basilisk. There was one line of words and a punctuation mark written on the note, which was concise and clear. Ryan smiled, and after giving a clear answer on the note, handed it to Pace and let it go to Hermione's hand. But when Pace was about to fly out, Ryan called out to Pace again and took the note back. Pace tilted his little head, not understanding Ryan's operation. Ryan added another sentence to the note, telling Hermione not to go to the laboratory on the 5th floor during this time. This attack reminded Ryan that the corridor on the 5th floor was still too remote. Maybe Snape did have good intentions before, but now that the basilisk is infested, it has become very unsafe. After Pace flew into the ventilation duct, Ryan retracted his gaze and turned to pay attention to what he was doing. The sooner he gets the defensive equipment, the sooner he can rest assured. He didn't want to see the petrified Hermione in Madame Pomfrey's infirmary one day. Ryan took out various materials from his pocket and placed them on the table one by one. This table is not a regular operating table, but it is enough for now. Ryan first took out a small bottle of magic crystal powder, poured it into a cup of green solution, stirred it evenly and set it aside for later use. Then Ryan took out a silver needle and began to draw runes on the material in his hand. Generally speaking, the more runes outlined, the stronger the alchemical item will be. But then again, alchemy items are only that big in total. If you want to outline more runes, in addition to reasonable arrangements, you can only outline the runes very small. For an alchemist, but it's quite a challenge. Ryan moved the silver needle in his hand bit by bit to ensure that all the runes were outlined correctly. Pace held the note from Hermione in his mouth and stood aside without daring to move. Once before, Pace interrupted Ryan's idea of improving a spell, and was beaten badly by Ryan. Pace shuddered when he recalled that incident, and then continued to quietly watch when Ryan would stop concentrating. In fact, it was just because Pace was too arrogant at that time, so Ryan found a reason to kill Pace's majesty so that he could safely work as an owl postman. Ryan quickly completed the rune carving of an alchemy item. He put down the silver needle and items in his hands, raised his hands, and stretched out. Pace also flew to Ryan at the right time, and then handed over the note in his mouth. Do you know about the secret room? A line of beautiful small characters caught Ryan's eyes, which reminded him that there is a passage leading to the secret room on the second floor of Hogwarts. Ryan picked up the pen and was about to write some words when he found Pace flying away from the pipe. This is a rule of Hogwarts. When curfew comes every day, all owls must return to the owl loft. This is also to prevent the little wizards from not sleeping at night and affecting their energy for the next day. Is it already this time? Ryan also knew this situation. After thinking about it, he put the note in the small box in the drawer and went to bed. Early the next morning, when Ryan came to the restaurant, he found that all the little wizards were discussing one thing, the Chamber of Secrets left by Slytherin. Among them, the little wizards of Slytherin discussed the matter most enthusiastically and had the most relaxed expressions on their faces. Because according to legend, the things left by Slytherin will not cause any harm to the pure-blooded little wizard. Therefore, the little wizards of Slytherin were even a little gloating about their misfortune, especially Malfoy. Today's young wizards are all discussing who is the descendant of Slytherin, and Malfoy is the most popular among them. Ryan found Chris, who was having breakfast among the crowd. He walked over, sat next to Chris, picked up a bacon sandwich in front of him and started eating. After he had eaten and drank enough, Ryan asked with confusion, "Kes, what's going on?" As he spoke, Ryan also pointed to the young wizards gathered together for discussion. "I don't know either. The topic of the secret room suddenly came up yesterday." Kes also looked confused. He went to bed earlier yesterday. When he woke up this morning, he found that everyone was discussing the secret room, but he knew nothing about it, making him like an illiterate now, and no one wanted to chat with him at all. "I know that." Beaver held an ordinary small box, squeezed out of Ryan and Kes, and sat between them. "Come on, have a taste, Wanna made it." Bifur opened the box and revealed the exquisite pastries inside. "Hurry up." Kes couldn't wait. Ryan took a piece and stuffed it into his mouth, and then he couldn't help but take another piece. Actually, the rumors of the Chamber of Secrets came from Gryffindor. What those little lions like most are the rumors of various secret rooms. I can guarantee that the secret rooms that have been discovered in Hogwarts will not be mentioned at all. Half of them were discovered by Gryffindor, they are very good at this. So the little lions have been studying things about the secret room, plus the words on the wall yesterday, so I guess someone started looking through the information as soon as they arrived in the dormitory. Plus at that time, the owls could still communicate with themselves. Once my friends shared it, everyone knew about it. Chris nodded thoughtfully, then put his left hand into the box that Beaver had brought. "What the hell, you all ate it all?" Kes scratched his head and looked at Ryan and Beaver in shock. "Kiss, be a little more open-minded. At least you heard a good story." Ryan comforted him. The little wizards are very enthusiastic about the secret room. They gather together to discuss it after class. During class, occasionally a few people who are not afraid of death will stand up and ask the professor. Professor Binns, a model worker at Hogwarts, is the one who gets the most questions, Ghost. And every time, Professor Binns would reply coldly, "Sit down and let's continue to the next page." Although they were treated so coldly by Professor Binns, the little wizards still happily asked Professor Binns questions in the history of magic class. "I have the momentum to not give up if you don't answer me." Until today, Professor Binns was once again asked by Seamus to the point where he couldn't bear it and had to answer. Otherwise Professor Binns believed that these little wizards could ask questions for a year. Until the heir of Slytherin returns to Hogwarts, unleashes the great terror that exists in the Chamber of Secrets, and cleanses the entire Hogwarts. When Professor Binns told about the secret room, the little wizards below woke up from their sleep one by one. When Professor Binns started talking about the textbook again, they fell asleep one by one. Fortunately the ghost won't die again. Chapter 127. The anomalies of the little wizards also attracted the attention of the professors. Several senior students said that Professor Trelawney predicted in class that several little wizards would be killed by monsters in the secret room in the near future. In short, the entire Hogwarts is immersed in rumors about the Chamber of Secrets. In this atmosphere, Hogwarts ushered in the first Quidditch match of this school year. On Saturday morning, Ryan was woken up by Pace. This was requested by Hermione to prevent him from missing the Quidditch match. After a simple wash, Ryan came to the restaurant with exhaustion all over his body. Last night he finished making all the alchemy items that he gave away, so he stayed up for a while. Thinking of this, Ryan once again thanked Malfoy for moving out. After all, it would be inconvenient if he had a roommate. When Ryan arrived at the restaurant, the Gryffindor players were already sitting at the table having breakfast. However, their expressions were solemn, they just lowered their heads and kept stuffing things into their mouths, looking a bit tragic. When Ryan was halfway through eating, the players from the Slytherin team also came to the restaurant. Wearing emerald green uniforms, they held their heads high and walked with great power. Of course, the most eye-catching thing is that each of them is holding an extremely cool broom, Nimbus 2001. Everyone was watching them, and the players were chatting and laughing with each other, in sharp contrast to the Gryffindor players. But now not many little wizards are optimistic that Gryffindor can win, even if the Gryffindor team has a savior. The equipment gap is too big. As long as one of the seekers on both sides notices the snitch's movement, the other person will definitely be able to see it too. However, Malfoy's Nimbus 2001 is obviously better than Harry's Nimbus 2000. Even though the strength is similar, the advantage of the equipment is reflected. Time passed slowly, and teams from both sides began to enter the field. Ryan and Hermione were sitting in the stands instead of watching from the observatory like last year. Ryan was sitting in the stands with no expression on his face. He really had no love for Quidditch. But seeing Hermione's excited look, Ryan didn't say much, so it didn't hurt to take a look. Sitting around were some wizards from Hogsmeade. Every year at this time, some wizards who loved Quidditch would come to Hogwarts to watch the games, and many of them were scouts looking for talented little wizards. There was faint thunder in the sky, and the weather was extremely hot, but the players on the field didn't feel it at all. They were now staring closely at the box on the grass as Madame Pomfrey was about to tee off. As the whistle blew, the Quaffle, Bludger and Golden Snitch took off one after another, and the game officially began. After the game started, the Slytherin team relied on Nimbus 2001's advantage to quickly open up the score. Although George and Fred chased wildly, their brooms were not as fast as those of their opponents, so they could only eat dust behind others. The Bludger seemed to have locked onto Harry Potter, chasing Harry crazily. When the Slytherin beater saw all this, he laughed out loud happily. Fred could only keep beating the Bludger around Harry, trying to hit it towards the Slater players. But every time the Bludger was knocked out, it would somehow turn a corner and fly towards Harry. Because of this, the Gryffindor players had to fight against Slytherin without Fred, and were also worried about Harry's situation. The two aspects combined made the score between the two sides even greater. Hermione looked at all this, feeling a little depressed, and kept muttering words such as "the Bludger is enchanted, this is cheating" and so on. Ryan had no other thoughts. He opened his magic vision and easily found Dobby's location. After the last assassination, even if the house elf turned to ash, he could still identify it in his magic vision. I don't know when, it started to rain in the sky. Ryan raised his head and found that a transparent cover suddenly appeared above the stands, blocking the falling raindrops. Ha ha ha, it's amazing, isn't it? Only professional Quidditch fields can have this kind of setting, but unfortunately, only the audience can have this kind of treatment. A wizard next to Ryan said to him. However, going through wind and rain is also a test, and this is also the charm of Quidditch. Because you never know what the weather will be like in the next game, whether it will be heavy rain, strong wind, or snow, but no matter what, we have to after playing this game, this is the charm of Quidditch. Another wizard also said, and then the two looked at each other and laughed heartily as if they had met their close friends. On the field, the Bludger became more and more violent, and its speed became faster and faster, as if it was going to cripple Harry. Damn it, I swear those Slytherin guys must have cheated, Fred yelled to Harry. Harry was so focused on avoiding the Bludgers that he had no time to answer Fred's words. Not long after, Wood stopped the game and the Gryffindor players gathered together. Oh, it's okay even if you give up, but the ball must be tested, Hermione said fiercely. At this time, the little girl was completely convinced that the ball was cursed by Slytherin. After hearing Hermione's words, the wizards around them all nodded in agreement. After all, this was too weird to be played normally. The Bludgers were just spinning around one person, and the turning was obviously not quite right. Above the stands, the cheers of Slytherin's little wizards began to weaken. At this time, the looks in the eyes of the little wizards around them made them very uncomfortable. They are Slytherins, and there is nothing wrong with using some small tricks to win. But there will never be such a clever move in public. This is not called means, it is called stupidity. It is the last thing any Slytherin will do. After a brief interruption of the game, the Gryffindor players resolutely decided to continue the game, which was greeted by the cheers of countless little wizards. The Bludgers kept attacking Harry, distracting him from the snitch. But soon, the golden snitch flew past Harry's cheek. Harry's movements quickly attracted Malfoy's attention, and then he also discovered the golden snitch. The actions of the two also attracted the attention of the little wizard in the stands. The players on both sides also began to pay attention, and Jordan also began to explain the situation here. But in the end, Harry caught the golden snitch, and the price was that Harry broke an arm and was admitted to the infirmary. Chapter 128. After the game, Ryan gave the refined defensive items to Hermione and Kes. Kes and Beaver accepted it with a smile. The alchemy items in their hands meant that Ryan regarded them as friends. According to legend, the monsters in the Chamber of Secrets were used to clean out the little wizards in Hogwarts who Slytherin believed should not learn magic. In other words, it was during this period that purebloods were extremely safe in Hogwarts. But Kes and the others didn't say anything, like they didn't need it. After Hermione received it, she gave Ryan a hug. In the days that followed, Hogwarts became quiet, as if the previous attacks were an illusion. But Mrs. Norris, lying in the school doctor's room, and Filch, who had been lingering under the wall with the words, reminded the little wizards that the secret room had really been opened. However, because of Filch, no little wizard is willing to come to the first floor now, unless it is absolutely necessary, such as eating, attending classes, etc., but then they will pass quickly. As long as you slow down a little bit, Filch will drag you in place and won't let you go for a long time. Several little wizards have been late for class because of this reason. The professors were also made miserable by Filch and went to Filch many times to discuss the matter. Filch would agree every time, but would turn around and wander under the wall again. Over time, not many people were willing to deal with this crazy and insane Filch. Perhaps no one had ever been willing to deal with him. Ryan was walking in the corridor, looking at Filch standing under the torch in the distance and crying silently, and felt a little uncomfortable. But he didn't go to comfort her because it was already curfew. Since Mrs. Norris was attacked, Filch's patrols at night have been much less frequent, which has caused the little wizards to go out at night much more often. Ryan quietly walked to the basement from the small corridor next to him. He had just returned from the Forbidden Forest. There are countless materials in the Forbidden Forest. This is a big treasure. It is impossible for Ryan to look at this piece of fat and remain indifferent. Yes, with these tinder, I can strengthen the pendant. Ryan touched the pendant around his neck. The rope of the pendant was just an ordinary rope. Ryan wanted to use these tinders to weave a magic item again, and then put it into the pendant, so that two pieces of equipment could be contained in the same volume as one piece of equipment. Ryan touched the wall and walked toward the basement. The dark environment did not arouse any fear in Ryan. This was his confidence in his own strength. Haha, you hidden rat, your stink can make carrion birds circle around you 10 times, and you are still hiding there. Ryan stared at the darkness in front of him and mocked. In his eyes, there was a large mass of magic power there, and judging from its shape, it should be a humanoid creature. Haha, Ryan Zell, we meet again. A voice as cold as a poisonous snake came from the darkness in front of him. This is Voldemort's voice. Ryan reacted quickly. Without him, he had heard it too much when he was at Gunter's old house. A figure in black robes, with his face hidden in a hood, flashed out from around the corner. The torches on the wall swayed unsteadily, and the shadows reflected on the wall began to show their teeth and claws. I said, I want you to die. These words were growled by Voldemort. There are not many connections between Voldemort's Horcruxes. After such a long time, each remnant soul gradually formed its own character and personality, and each other was aware of this problem, so the connections between the various Horcruxes became much less. However, when Ryan killed the remnant soul of Voldemort last time, the remnant soul of Voldemort still expressed its unwillingness to the outside world. The sleeping remnant of Voldemort. Maybe it wasn't contacted, but the remnant spirit of Voldemort who was active behind Professor Quirrell's head at that time received the message. You dare to destroy my Horcrux, I'm here to fulfill my promise. Voldemort began to walk forward slowly. Don't worry, I have cast a silent spell here, no matter how big the movement is, it won't attract anyone's attention. Ryan looked at Voldemort's moving body with some doubts in his eyes. No, what kind of remnant soul is Voldemort in front of me, and he can act on it? No, it doesn't have to be a body. It can also be a parasite on the back of other people's heads like last year. Ryan thought this, but what followed was, where did Voldemort replenish his vitality? Last year Voldemort parasitized the back of Quirrell's head, but forced Quirrell to hunt unicorns in the Forbidden Forest to survive. As for the professors in Hogwarts today, Voldemort definitely does not have the strength to parasitize them. Moreover, professors often come into contact with Dumbledore, and with what happened last year, Voldemort does not have the courage to parasitize professors. So the person standing in front of Ryan now can only be a little wizard. Ha ha ha, are you wondering why I can stand here? Voldemort looked at Ryan's eyes and knew that he was thinking about this problem. Let me tell you. Voldemort decided to let the boy in front of him know how powerful he was, and not let him die in doubt. I, the great Dark Lord, have always been so considerate towards my enemies. Dumbledore, that old guy, always thinks he can control everything, but is that really the case? Voldemort's words were full of sarcasm. Thanks to him, I can stand in front of you with a new attitude, and I have the opportunity to send you to reunite with your parents. He thought he could control everything, but he was wrong. Did he think that if he put the Philosopher's Stone in the mirror of East, I wouldn't be able to get it? Yes, I really can't get it. But his mistake was that he shouldn't play savior tricks with children. I got the magic stone from his hand. The power is fascinating. Perhaps he thought that the stone had lost its magic power and was no longer useful. But how did he know that? There was still the last trace of magic power in the stone, and it was this magic power that gave me new life. As he spoke, Voldemort began to laugh. Ryan listened silently without saying a word. The plot has now become biased, and it is no longer the plot that I am familiar with. I heard that you once had a duel with that little guy from the Malfoy family at the opening ceremony. Yes, it's really good. So in this situation, can we also have a duel? Voldemort finished laughing. Stared at Ryan and said. Ryan looked at Voldemort, who took out his wand in front of him and said nothing. Hurry up! Voldemort roared. Chapter 129. Okay, Mr. Riddle. Ryan smiled and bent towards Voldemort. When Voldemort saw Ryan starting to follow the ritual standards, he smiled happily and bowed to Ryan. Then the two began to distance themselves from each other with their backs to each other. Avada Kedavra! At the moment he turned around, Voldemort raised his wand and shouted. A green light lit up from the tip of Voldemort's wand, illuminating every corner of the staircase. Ryan lifted it up, and a wall of earth rose from the ground, blocking Voldemort's death curse. And Ryan's earth wall also shattered into clods of earth and merged into the ground. The flat ground made it difficult to tell that a wall of earth had just been raised here. Haha, that's interesting. Voldemort laughed coldly, but he never thought that this death curse could kill Ryan. The more interesting thing is yet to come, Mr. Riddle. Ryan looked at Voldemort and said coldly. The first time he let the basilisk deal with him, this time he dealt with him directly. No matter who it is, they will get angry if they are attacked repeatedly. Really? Voldemort also smiled. He didn't believe that the little guy in front of him could have any backup plans. But the next scene made Voldemort open his eyes wide. A dark light kept jumping in Ryan's hand, and the most terrifying thing was that Voldemort felt a hint of fear from that light. Damn it! Voldemort cursed in his heart, but on the surface he still had the same calm expression. Ryan turned his hand around, and the black light seemed to have mass, falling from Ryan's hand and reaching the ground almost instantly. As soon as the black light touched the ground, it immediately turned into a puddle of water-like substance and began to spread on the ground. Voldemort looked at the black substance that was about to spread to his feet, and with a thought, he was ready to turn himself into black mist. But the black matter spread too fast. Before Voldemort was ready to turn into black mist, it had already spread to Voldemort's feet. The black substance spread rapidly up Voldemort's feet, and at this moment, Voldemort turned into a black mist, floated to the side, and condensed into a human form again. And a large piece of his black robe has been corroded away. Avada Kedavra! Voldemort! No more nonsense, he directly greeted with a life-killing curse. Magic shield. Ryan held up the shield and directly resisted the life-killing curse. Then, he started his own spell storm. Ice vertebrae, fireballs, vines, earth thorns, etc., although the damage is not high, they are better because they consume less mana and are released quickly. In such a small space, they can suppress the enemy. Most importantly, most of them also have control effects. Voldemort released an iron armor spell, trying to resist Ryan's spell. But after coming into contact, he discovered that there were abnormalities in these spells. The slowness of the ice pick, the burning of the fireball, etc., all made him realize that he had underestimated the little wizard in front of him who was only in the 2nd grade. Although Voldemort It was very strange that Ryan came from these spells, but it was obvious that the situation in front of him was not suitable for reminiscing, and Ryan would definitely not tell him. Split apart, thunderbolt explosion, Avada Kedavra. Isn't it just magic suppression? Who can't do it? Voldemort thought so. Ryan also gave up his original low-level spells and began to use some powerful spells while hiding. Because apart from giving Voldemort some abnormal status, those spells couldn't even break Voldemort's iron armor curse. But the place is only so big. No matter how hard both sides hide, it is impossible to completely avoid the other side's spells. So in just a few minutes, Ryan and Voldemort were covered in scars. At this time, Filch came to the staircase swaying and sobbing softly. It seems that we won't be able to fight today, boy. I hope you like the gift I gave you. As he said that, Voldemort's black robe instantly turned into fly ash, revealing the face of Voldemort's parasitic little wizard. David Cartier, a Muggle wizard, 5th year, from Gryffindor. David's body clearly began to stiffen, and his complexion turned from pale to grey. Everything looked similar to Mrs. Norris's condition. The potholes on the ground originally caused by the spell explosion were filled in this moment, and everything became exactly the same as before Ryan arrived. Voldemort turned into a mist and floated next to David. He looked at Ryan with a pair of scarlet eyes. He didn't even see him open his mouth, but heard his voice. Boy, enjoy the treasure I left for you. After saying that, Voldemort disappeared in front of Ryan. I knew it. I knew the murderer would definitely show up again. Filch looked at Ryan's figure and shouted excitedly. He rushed towards Ryan, trying to catch Ryan. But Ryan would just follow his wishes and hide himself with the disguise curse. Where have you gone? Where have you gone? You are here, I know, the disillusionment curse, I know. Seeing Ryan disappear, Filch could no longer hold his heartstrings, and began to go crazy. Constantly he waved his arms around randomly, hoping to catch Ryan. Ah, another poor thing. My Loris, it is like this too. When he saw David lying on the ground, Filch slowly sat down on the ground and began to cry slowly. Ryan looked at the crying Filch, shook his head, and went back to the Slytherin lounge. Not long after Ryan lay down, he was woken up by the Slytherin prefect. After Filch finished crying, he immediately found Professor Flitwick, who was on night watch. After Professor Flitwick heard the news, he rushed over immediately, followed by Dumbledore, Snape, and others. Lockhart is there too. Immediately afterwards, Dumbledore quickly notified the prefects and asked them to count the number of people in their own colleges to prevent any young wizards from wandering outside at night. The next morning, Ryan came outside the restaurant, glanced at the academic style casually, and his eyes suddenly widened. The school spirit of Slytherin became the second, the first became Hufflepuff, and the third was Ravenclaw. As for the last Gryffindor, it was really pitiful, with only 11 gems left in the jar. Ryan, have you heard that another little wizard has been petrified? And according to Professor Dumbledore, the chance of the injured little wizard waking up this time is very small. As soon as Ryan sat down at the dining table, Kes came over to him. And I heard from Filch that he saw the murderer last night and is currently discussing with Principal Dumbledore to identify all the students in the school. Chapter 130. After hearing this, Ryan couldn't help feeling depressed. Why is Voldemort always causing trouble for him? Wouldn't it be better to just go find the savior and play happily together? But I think there is a high probability that it won't be found. Kes took a sip of milk and said, if it could be found so easily, then Slytherin would not create Gryffindor together with the other three giants. After all, he is the descendant of Slytherin. This was what Kes said to Ryan in a low voice. And there's another question that no one has figured out. Beaver sat across from Chris. Why does that little lion go to the basement at night? All the little wizards are discussing this issue. There are different opinions, and no one agrees with the other. Beaver shook his head. He could not understand Hogwarts more and more now. How could Hogwarts suddenly change in the past 2 years? Is it dangerous? Actually, I'm also very curious. It was already midnight at that time. Why did a Gryffindor come to the door of Slytherin? Kes said while biting the bacon. Maybe. Before Kes could finish his words, he noticed that the entire restaurant instantly became silent, and Kes swallowed the words he had not yet spoken. The little wizards in the restaurant now looked towards the door. Principal Dumbledore opened the door and walked in, followed by Snape with a bad look on his face, followed by Professor McGonagall with a frown, then Professor Flitwick, then Professor Sprout, and finally it was a smiling Lockhart and an excited Filch. Several professors walked through the crowd and sat on the faculty bench. "I'm very sorry to disturb everyone for a few minutes." Dumbledore sat down and stood up again. "According to the request of Mr. Filch, the administrator of Hogwarts, we need to conduct an identification on everyone. I believe everyone also I know what happened last night, so please cooperate with me." Dumbledore's words revealed too much helplessness and sadness. In fact, if Filch hadn't gone to the principal's office to make a fuss early this morning, Dumbledore wouldn't be in the dining room right now. He prefers to investigate secretly. Isn't such a big fanfare a reminder to the mastermind behind it? However, Filch did make a big fuss, and in the end Dumbledore had to agree to his request to appease Filch. However, you can also take advantage of the opportunity to reveal your opponent's weaknesses. Dumbledore sat on a chair and thought as he looked at the shocked little wizards below. One after another, the young wizards walked to the staff table to be questioned by the professors, and then circled in front of Filch to ask him to identify whether it was the man in black robes who stood on the stairs last night. But it was obvious that Filch did not seize this opportunity well. "It's you, I'm absolutely right, it must be you." Filch grabbed a young wizard's wrist tightly and yelled. "Filch! This gentleman slept in the dormitory last night. This was proved by someone." Professor McGonagall frowned deeper. She petrified a Gryffindor cub last night, and she was still thinking about it. As a result, Dumbledore informed her of this childish incident this morning. When he came to the restaurant, he saw Filch playing monkey here and caught a little wizard, and shouted that he was the murderer who petrified David. "Haha, good luck to you, kid." Filch let go of his hand, then stared at the little wizard and said coldly. When the little wizard saw Dumbledore nodded, he ran off the stage as if he were running away, as if there was some man-eating demon on the stage. Immediately afterwards, another young wizard walked onto the stage tremblingly. His back looked like a prisoner about to enter the execution ground. Ryan didn't pay attention to the stage, but stuffed bread into his mouth, and he just started to eat breakfast. "Haha, it's you, it's definitely you." Filch's voice sounded in Ryan's ears again. Bang! A loud noise attracted all the extensions of the little wizard, including Ryan. "Sorry, Mr. Headmaster, I remembered that I was still brewing a pot of potion, so I left first." Snape stood up, the black robe on his body still fluttering from the action of slapping the table just now. After speaking, Snape didn't care what Dumbledore's answer was, and left the staff table and walked out the door. Professor Sprout also stood up and said coldly, "The newly arrived Mandrake still needs me to take care of it, so I'm leaving first." After saying that, he left without caring about Dumbledore's answer. Fortunately, she thought that coming to the restaurant early in the morning would really catch the mysterious man from last night, but she didn't expect that such a big move was coming to play house with Filch. For the first time, Professor Sprout had the idea of whether Dumbledore was old and confused. 2 of the 4 deans had already left. Professor Flitwick sat in his seat and glanced left and right, but still did not leave. Professor McGonagall sat upright. After each young wizard came up, she asked them carefully. After confirming that there is no suspicion, she will also show a smile and comfort the frightened little wizard. After all, anyone who walked up would be a little frightened if Filch grabbed their wrist and yelled at him for a while. When it was Ryan's turn to go up, Filch still tried to grab Ryan's wrist, but Ryan dodged it. "It must be you. How dare you hide away?" Filch shouted again. However, Ryan ignored him completely and looked at Professor McGonagall next to him. "Zell, where were you last night? Is there anyone who can testify?" Professor McGonagall asked the same question that she had asked countless times. "I stayed in the dormitory last night. As for witnesses, there are no witnesses. My roommate Malfoy moved out when the first year started." Ryan's words made Professor McGonagall frown. After all, he was born in Slytherin, and he was alone and had no witnesses. How could he be suspected? "Professor, I am a Muggle wizard." Ryan looked at Professor McGonagall's frown, not knowing what Professor McGonagall was thinking. Upon hearing this, Professor McGonagall immediately relaxed her brows. Indeed, Ryan is just a little Muggle wizard, the type that Slytherin hates the most. So no matter who is the descendant of the secret room, it will not be him. "Okay, you go down. Pay more attention to safety recently." Professor McGonagall nodded to Ryan. "No way, it must be him." Filch shouted. "Filch, I know you want to find the murderer, but don't accuse the innocent. I hope you can produce enough evidence when you accuse a young wizard. Professor McGonagall retorted unceremoniously. Chapter 131. A farce at breakfast turned Filch into the most disgusting person at Hogwarts. Although this farce allowed the little wizards to escape a lesson, they did not appreciate it at all, because now, the entire Hogwarts became the murderer in Filch's mouth. Ha ha ha, children, don't worry. Lockhart said to the young wizards in the audience during the defense against the dark arts class. I, Gilderoy Lockhart, have fought vampires and travelled with trolls. Sleeping with the ghouls. Please believe that I will be able to bring the murderer to justice. These words aroused the echoes of many little witches in the audience, giving the originally lifeless classroom a glimmer of vitality. Lockhart looked at the expectant little witch in the audience and showed a shining smile. Potter, come here. Lockhart waved in the direction of Harry. Merlin's beard, I'd rather go to potions class. Harry complained to Ron, and then reluctantly moved to the podium. If he really moved over, at that speed, he would probably not be able to reach the podium until the end of Get Out of Class. Haha, I know you can't wait. Lockhart rushed off the podium and dragged Harry to the podium. Okay, turn the book Walking with Trolls to page 126. Next, Mr. Potter and I will bring you the most exciting scene of this book. I will play the role of the character in the book. I, and Mr. Potter, play the troll. I'm really fed up. This isn't a defense against the dark arts class. Let's just rename it a drama class. Hermione lowered her head and said to Ryan, her tone full of anger. I can finally see that this Professor Lockhart is an idiot. Hermione didn't lower her voice at all, so that the young wizard in the front row could hear her clearly. However, they did not refute, but nodded in agreement. Hermione, this is normal. This course has been cursed by Voldemort, and every professor cannot teach it for a full year. This matter is obvious to everyone. So under such circumstances, who dares to accept the invitation? Either he is a strong man with profound magic power, or he is a confused idiot. Obviously, Professor Lockhart is the idiot. Ryan looked up at Lockhart and said in a low voice. Lockhart and Harry were performing hard on the stage, and the little witches in the audience would make a wow sound every time they saw the exciting part. There was also laughter led by Malfoy. Malfoy now likes the defense against the dark arts class more and more, because every time he attends class, he can see his dear Scarhead being beaten to death on the podium as a ghoul, troll, vampire, and other monsters. At the same time, Mr. Potter will be asked by Lockhart to make some strange noises. Amidst the admiration of the little witches, the suffering of Mr. Potter, the joy of Malfoy, and the enjoyment of Lockhart, the bell rang for the end of Get Out of Class. The Get Out of Class is finally over. If I keep listening, I can't wait to go up and let that idiot know what a real disarming spell is. Hermione said depressedly next to Ryan. In class, Lockhart performed a disarming spell to snatch the stick from the troll's hand. But Hermione could tell at a glance that although Lockhart knew how to release the disarming spell, he would never be able to release it as easily as he said. Ryan didn't say anything, just shrugged. It must be you. It must be you. Only you can pass through the wall and find the secret room. Filch's voice came from the front. Filch was currently yelling at a wall. I knew you ghosts had no good intentions. You kept wandering around Hogwarts, and then accidentally discovered the location of the secret room. Ha, there must be something in the secret room that can revive you. My poor Loris, just I suffered so cruelly from them. As he spoke, Filch lay on the wall and cried. See the little wizard walking in front. In this situation, I decided to take another road, even if that road was a little further and would delay my lunch time. But there was no Filch on that road, and Filch would not be dragged inexplicably to ask why he killed his cat. Damn it! Why should I kill your cat, even though I hate it to death? If I killed it, I would definitely throw it far away so that you can't find it. This is what all the little wizards thought after being pulled by Filch. In just one noon, all the ghosts in Hogwarts were harassed by Filch. Now, when they come out of the wall, they have to look around first to prevent Filch from being around. When the time comes, another lecture will affect your mood. The little wizards spent their lunchtime in heated discussions. Everyone is talking about Filch cursing the ghosts today, which makes everyone hate Filch even more, because some ghosts actually have a good relationship with the little wizards. For example, the relationship between Mr. Buckland and Ryan. In the first grade, Mr. Ghost provided a lot of help to Ryan. And just now, he heard Mr. Buckland being scolded by Filch and hiding in a small corner of the library on the 4th floor, crying silently. But something even more surprising is yet to come. When the little wizards woke up from their nap and prepared to go to class, they heard Filch yelling at the murals on the wall. "Why is Filch so angry?" Hermione asked, looking at Filch, who was cursing at the portrait, pulling Ryan around. "We have to hurry up. This road is a bit far. I hope the stairs haven't changed positions." Hermione started to run with Ryan. "I guess Filch is too sad," Ryan said to Hermione. However, the little girl was running forward with all her strength at this time and had no time to pay attention to Ryan. "Hey! Then you shouldn't treat innocent people like this." Hermione stood in front of the stairs, holding her knees with her hands and panting slightly. "Hurry up, thanks to the fact that the stairs haven't changed position, otherwise we would have to take another 3 minutes of detour." Ryan and Hermione entered the classroom with the bell ringing. Professor McGonagall stood on the podium and nodded slightly to the two of them, motioning for them to come in, and then looked into the classroom. There were a few little wizards sitting sparsely in the classroom, but all other seats were empty. Ryan and Hermione found a seat near the front and sat down, picked up their books and started to preview. The two of them didn't dare to play at all, because Professor McGonagall's face looked terrible at this time. "Sorry, Professor." Several little wizards ran and appeared at the door of the classroom. It was Filch. He was blocking the road. "We were a little scared, and were held in place by him, so we took a detour," another little wizard explained. Chapter 132. "Okay, come in." Professor McGonagall suppressed her inner anger and said to the trembling little wizards outside the classroom door. "Thank you, Professor." The little wizard outside the door was overjoyed and thanked him quickly. During the detour, they all thought they were about to have their college points deducted. However, between deducting college points and being dragged by Filch, they chose the former. They did not expect that Professor McGonagall would directly exempt them from the deduction. The little wizards happily found a seat and sat down, then took out their books and sat upright to look at Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall nodded. She was very satisfied with the performance of these little wizards. At the same time, she became even more dissatisfied with Filch. It is human nature to have feelings for your cat, and no one can say anything about it. But you continue to accuse innocent people, and even interrupt the little wizard's lessons, which is too much. This is Hogwarts, the best magic school in the country, not Filch's cat farm. Professor McGonagall decided to talk to Dumbledore about this matter after class. After all, she was also the deputy principal of Hogwarts. "Okay, turn the book to." "Sorry, Professor, we're late." The sound of Professor McGonagall's lecture was interrupted by a voice outside the door. Harry stood at the door with the book in his arms, panting. He overslept, and he met Filch on the way, so he had to take a long detour. As for Ron, if Harry hadn't woken up in time, maybe this guy would have been able to sleep until the night. Professor McGonagall frowned. She had already accumulated a lot of anger today. Moreover, Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley's academic performance is not very good, and now they are even late for class. The wave of people blocked by Filch before had already arrived. "Sorry, Professor." Harry lowered his head, a little embarrassed. "Come in, gentlemen, I hope you don't need to do it again, otherwise I will let you personally experience the mystery of transformation. Maybe this can make your grades a little better." In the end, this cold-faced and warm-hearted witch still had no intention of letting her anger burn onto the students. However, when the little wizards were in class, they clearly felt that Professor McGonagall was a little different today. Normally, no matter how stupid the little wizard is, Professor McGonagall will gently explain it to him over and over again. But today was different. After Ron broke the button used for transformation, Professor McGonagall just gave him a new button coldly and said nothing more. The little wizards looked at the indifferent Professor McGonagall and unconsciously lowered their voices while chanting spells. At the same time, the little wizards who were taking potions class were not feeling so wonderful. Snape kept moving between the seats of the little wizards. Even the slightest mistake would cause Snape to shout loudly, and then his house would be deducted 1 point. Idiot! How many times have I said that black sesame seeds must be boiled in boiling water until they are bright red? Why are they taken out just after they turn red? If you have eye problems, then I suggest you go to the 2nd floor. Take a look at the school hospital. If you are confused and can't recognize where the 2nd floor is, then I can be merciful and find someone to take you there. 1 point will be deducted from Hufflepuff. Hell, the recipe for configuring the potion is on the blackboard. Can you raise your head and take a closer look? Oh, I understand. People with a head full of stones can't lift their heads because the weight of the stones will weigh them down. Can't lift it up at all. 1 point from Ravenclaw. Haha, I think I can give you an application to drop out of school. My Merlin, can you cut an English green shadow fruit into something like this? Are you skipping directly to the second year? 1 point will be deducted for Hufflepuff. Throughout the potions class, the only sounds that could be heard were the gurgling of boiling water in the cauldron and Snape's constant taunting voice. Apart from that, there were only a few sounds of the knife hitting the table. In addition, the faces of the other professors were not very good looking, and Filch's actions had more or less affected the students' class. After the bell rang, the little wizards ran out of the classroom as if they were running away. No one wanted to stay in this cold classroom for even 1 second longer. Then, on the way to the restaurant, the little wizards once again met Filch, who was yelling at the portrait. Ha, they are all a bunch of cowards who only know how to hide. In desperation, the little wizards had to take a long detour again. This also resulted in that when the little wizards arrived at the restaurant, the delicious dinner was already cold and no longer as delicious as before. My Merlin, I can hardly bear it. In the middle of dinner, a young wizard slapped the table and shouted, but everyone was angrily discussing Filch at this time, so no one paid attention. Hermione sat at the Gryffindor table, took a few bites, then picked up the book on the table and left the restaurant angrily. When Ryan saw the little girl leaving, he put down his dinner and followed her. I really can't believe that Professor Dumbledore allowed such a person to disrupt the school's teaching order. After such a big thing, maybe suspending school is a good choice. At least until the basilisk is caught, it won't work. What's the problem? The little girl paused, but at least, Filch shouldn't be allowed to continue like this. Hermione, relax a little. I believe the professors must be discussing this issue with Professor Dumbledore right now. In fact, the 4 deans of the 4 major universities also gathered in the principal's office at this time, and there was also Lockhart. The other professors saw the deans of the 4 major universities coming and did not come to join in the fun. Dumbledore, I think we can't let Filch continue like this. This has seriously affected the students' classes. Although Filch loves his cat, we are a school here, not his cattery. We have to be responsible for the students. Professor McGonagall took the lead in attacking Professor Dumbledore. Yes, the students love my classes so much. Now because of Filch, the children will have to miss classes for a long time. How sad they must be. Lockhart agreed, and said to Professor McGonagall smiled brightly. Professor McGonagall's chest rose and fell twice. Finally, because she was concerned that this was the principal's office, Professor McGonagall held back, but ignored Lockhart. What McGonagall means is what we mean. We can't go on like this. The murderer has not been caught yet, and the so-called secret room has not been found. I think we need to launch a major search of Hogwarts, Dumbledore. Professor Sprout suggested. Chapter 133. Dumbledore sat in a chair with his eyes drooped, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. What are you waiting for, Dumbledore? This is a major matter related to the safety of Hogwarts. Ms. Delise Derwent said. I think Ms. Derwent is right, but where is the secret room hidden? When I was the principal, I searched the school several times and couldn't find it. Should I say it is worthy of Slytherin? Evra said. Dumbledore, this is my request, don't let Hogwarts fall into the panic of the Chamber of Secrets. I. Mr. Armando Dippet actually started crying as he spoke. He regarded the secret room incident as a disgrace to his career as a principal, and it was precisely because of that secret room incident that he resigned. Okay, the time is set for this Saturday. We will spend a day to search the castle again. Then let the little wizards stay in the dormitory, which will give them time to do their homework. Dumbledore pondered. After a while, he said. I will ask the house elves to help then. Considering that several professors needed to prepare lessons on weekends and time was a bit tight, Dumbledore also brought the house elves in. This is the best. Professor McGonagall breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what the result is, a thorough investigation can at least put people at ease. Ah, by the way, Mr. Principal. An annoying voice sounded in the principal's room, attracting the attention of several deans and Dumbledore. I noticed that everyone seems to be a little nervous. How about I organize a duel club? I happen to be the professor who teaches defense against the dark arts. I will teach the students some practical spells for their hands, which will also make everyone relaxed. Some. As Lockhart spoke, he also paid attention to showing a warm smile. The four deans looked at their noses with their eyes, and their noses looked at their hearts, without moving at all. They were completely uninterested in the dueling club proposed by Lockhart. To be precise, they hated Lockhart, this annoying guy. But Lockhart kept talking, telling Dumbledore the advantages of holding a dueling club. Okay, you can just take care of this matter. Dumbledore picked his ears and said helplessly. He now felt that his ears were hurting. I believe those boys and girls will scream with excitement when they hear the news. Lockhart laughed. By the way, I also need an assistant. You know, I have to set an example for the children. I can't just rely on explanations, right? I mean, at least let them know what to do. As he spoke, Lockhart glanced at the four deans one by one. Professor McGonagall? No, she is a master of transfiguration, and I heard she was an Auror before. Professor Flitwick? Lockhart gave up the idea immediately. He came from Ravenclaw Academy, so he naturally knew how powerful his dean was. That was the champion of the duel competition, and he was still teaching the charms class at Hogwarts. Merlin knew how strong Professor Flitwick was now. Professor Sprout? No, the professor seems to be happy with everyone all day long. If I accidentally hurt her, it will affect my image in the hearts of the little wizards. Lockhart looked around, and only Professor Snape agreed with him the most. The potions professor has taught for so many years, and has probably forgotten most of his actual combat experience. Moreover, he has a bad reputation among students. Only by knocking him to the ground can he gain more cheers. Lockhart nodded with satisfaction and said to Dumbledore, I think Dean Snape is good, but I don't know if Dean Snape is willing. Just now, Lockhart's blatant look at several professors had caused their displeasure, especially Snape. Damn bugs, disgusting hypocrisy. That's what Snape thought at the time. Snape was a little surprised when he heard Lockhart's words. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Lockhart, with no trace of happiness or anger in his cold eyes. But anyone who knew Snape well knew that at this time, Snape probably couldn't help but take action. In fact, Snape's hand had quietly touched the handle of his wand. How about it, Professor Snape? Don't worry, I will be merciful. I am just setting an example for the children. There will be no danger. Lockhart smiled at Snape, acting harmless. After all, if Snape refused, where would he find such a good model? Snape's hand has let go of the wand. He is no longer angry at all, because if you get angry with a fool, you will become a fool yourself over time. He simply turned around and looked at the sorting hat on the small stool, ignoring Lockhart. But how could Lockhart miss such a good opportunity, and continued, Hey, Professor Snape, it's all for the sake of the children. You won't refuse, right? Think about it, if you win, the word defeat here seems to have the same meaning, what a great honor that would be. When the time comes, you can publish a book called The Me Who Defeated Lockhart, and you will definitely be able to transfer a large amount of galleons. That's much better than you messing around with these bottles and jars. Respectable and clean, Lockhart added. Snape turned his head, squinted his eyes, and looked at Lockhart, as if he was looking at a strange thing. Then, I agreed. I hope Professor Lockhart will show mercy when the time comes. Snape said, but anyone could hear the coldness and murderous intent in his tone. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. After saying that, he turned around and left, snorting coldly as he passed by Lockhart. Damn bedbug, how should I deal with him then? A death curse? The Imperious curse? The Cruciatus curse? Or tear him apart and let him explode into several pieces in front of you? Or should I let him try my new potion? As Snape walked, he kept thinking about how he should deal with this annoying bug that jumped around. Lockhart looked at Snape leaving and smiled with satisfaction. He seemed to have seen the scene when he accepted the cheers of the young wizards. Then I'll go get ready first. Lockhart also smiled and left the principal's office. The other three deans and Professor Dumbledore were constantly communicating with their eyes. Why would someone rush to die? Professor McGonagall looked at Professor Flitwick. Is this the kind of person who comes out of Ravenclaw? Sprout looked at Professor Flitwick. Don't you say that Ravenclaws are all smart people? Dumbledore looked at Professor Flitwick. Professor Flitwick, I don't know either. Chapter 134. Professors McGonagall, Professor Sprout, Professor Dumbledore and Professor Flitwick stared at each other for a long time without understanding why Lockhart was so eager to die. Or maybe we misunderstood him and he is really capable. Professor McGonagall thought so when she left. But in the blink of an eye, she forgot about this moment. The most important thing now was that she needed to go back and divide Hogwarts into divisions, and each professor was responsible for patrolling an area. In addition, the transfer of house elves also needs to be arranged. In addition to patrolling that day, the elves were also responsible for the meals of the little wizards. Soon, the entire Hogwarts knew the news about Saturday's screening and the duel club. This was the news released by Lockhart. And he also emphasized that he and Professor Snape would perform a real battle for everyone at the beginning of the club. For a moment, everyone seemed to have forgotten about the secret room that had been opened, and all their thoughts went to the duel club. Filch seemed to have been handed over to talk to Professor Dumbledore, and now he no longer embarrasses the young wizards. However, the hostility is still there. Whenever the little wizards pass by, he will say some unpleasant things. But even if the little wizards heard it, they would pretend they didn't hear it. Nowadays, not many people in Hogwarts are willing to talk to Filch. Hell, why do we all stay in the dormitory on Saturday and are not allowed to go out? I made an appointment with Juana to go to Mrs. Putiff's tea house. What should I do now? During lunch, Beaver sat down on the dining table. On the chair, he said somewhat depressedly. And Dean Snape gave us double the usual homework, saying it was so that we could calm down and stay in the dormitory to complete the homework that day. Kess was also a little sad. Students in the third year of Hogwarts and above can go to Hogsmeade on Saturdays. But now that it was suddenly announced that he was not allowed to go on Saturdays, and he had to complete double the homework in the dormitory, Ryan believed that many little wizards would wail. In fact, this is indeed the case. At this moment, there are already little wizards in the restaurant discussing this issue. Lockhart only said that they were not allowed to go out on Saturdays. At that time, the little wizard thought it was nothing, but until Snape gave them double homework, they immediately became uneasy. Immediately afterwards, another group of little wizards walked in dejectedly. What? Professor McGonagall also assigned double homework. At the Gryffindor table, a wizard suddenly jumped up and shouted, instantly attracting the attention of the young wizards. But at this time, the little wizards didn't want to know who was yelling, but were very interested in what he said. Hell, Professor Flitwick, Professor Sprout, and Professor Binns all give double homework, right? You can't finish it in one day on Saturday. I don't think it's possible, Professor Binns. It was already hard to not go to Hogsmeade, but I didn't expect it would be even worse now. Sigh. For a time, the restaurant became even more lively. Ah, you're going to kill me. Kess yelled and climbed onto the dining table. But no one looked over, because everyone was wailing at this time. Every time a little wizard comes, there will be more power to cry. Of course, there is not without good news. For example, Professor Lockhart has now set up a dual stage in an empty classroom on the first floor, and Professor Dumbledore has also assigned 2 house elves to help him. After discussing for a while, the little wizards began to discuss the news about the duel club. Now that extra homework has become a reality, it is better to think of something good, such as showing off your skills on the duel stage and gaining the admiration of the girl you like. Or maybe you have disliked a certain little wizard for a long time, so why not take this opportunity to make him look embarrassed in front of everyone? After thinking about it, the little wizards put down their knives and forks and started running to the library. If you read more books now, you might be able to learn a magic spell, and you might be able to use it later. In the afternoon class, the professors looked at the young wizards who were actively asking questions under the podium with great confusion. After learning the specific situation, the professors all answered the questions of the little wizards with smiles on their faces. Okay, kids, please wait a moment, we need to go to class first. Professor Flitwick said with a headache as he looked at the small hands raised under the podium. Half of this class has passed, but the problems of the little wizards have not diminished at all, but have become more and more serious. After hearing what the professor said, the little wizards reluctantly put down their hands. Some young wizards began to think about whether they should seek advice from some young wizards with strong magical abilities when they returned home. Hermione Granger seems to be very powerful. She used a petrification spell to petrify a cage of Cornish elves, and that was only if the elves caused trouble. Many little wizards silently made up their minds. After the afternoon classes were over, the little wizards began to walk to the restaurant together, talking and laughing. Ryan held the book and passed through one little wizard after another, gliding forward like a loach in the flow of people. When he and Hermione were in separate classes, the two would agree on a time and place to meet. After arriving at the location, Ryan realized something was wrong. The little wizards circled around the corner in front, talking something at the same time. Ryan! Hermione came out from the side and held Ryan's hand. Ryan glanced at Hermione, then pointed at the crowd, and asked curiously, "What happened there? Why are there so many people?" "Alas, this matter is very complicated." Hermione sighed. Colin Creevey was petrified, and his friends said that he went to find Potter to take photos. This is the case for everyone. I knew it, so I didn't care. But after class, the Paddle sisters passed by when they were going to have dinner. Then they saw Colin lying on the ground, and Potter was standing next to him. The Paddle sisters were so scared, so he screamed, and then he looked like this. "Get out of the way!" Madame Pomfrey's voice came, followed by a senior student holding a stretcher. "Quick, quick, get out of the way and put him on a stretcher." Madame Pomfrey directed the pupils while carefully checking Colin's injuries. "Exactly the same, Dumbledore must sift through Hogwarts tomorrow," Madame Pomfrey said viciously, and her words also fell into the ears of the little wizards around her. Because the stretcher could not be lifted by one person, the senior wizard cast a floating spell on the stretcher so that it could reach the school hospital smoothly. Magic is not allowed in the school corridor. An old hand grabbed the little wizard who was casting the spell. Chapter 135. "Go away, Filch, you have no place to speak here," Madame Pomfrey said angrily. After hearing that someone was injured, the little wizard took the initiative to help her get a stretcher, and even cast a levitating spell thoughtfully. However, when Filch said it, it became a violation of school rules. Madame Pomfrey glanced at Filch with disgust, and then prepared to pull away Filch's hand on the young wizard's wrist. But didn't pull away. "Madam, the school rules are the school rules, and they are not allowed to be changed." Filch shook his head, but still insisted on his opinion. Madame Pomfrey's face looked a little ugly, but she was not a professor, and she could not avoid punishment by speaking directly, but she still said, "Haha, you don't have the right to punish, this matter must be left to the professor to judge in the end." After saying that, Madame Pomfrey looked at the little wizard, put on a smile and said, "Don't worry, I will explain the situation to Professor Sprout." "What happened here?" Professor Sprout happened to come. "Ah, Professor, you came just in time. I caught a Hufflepuff casting spells in the corridor." Filch grinned and showed an ugly smile. "Sprout, the situation is like this." Madame Pomfrey stepped forward and explained to Professor Sprout. Professor Sprout listened and nodded. After Madame Pomfrey finished speaking, she first showed a smile to the little wizard, and then said coldly to Filch, "Okay, Filch, I already know about this matter. I will take care of the punishment myself. Please don't worry about it." "But, Professor Filch, he is my student." It was the first time for the little wizards who were watching to see the gentle Professor Sprout get so angry. For a while, the little wizards didn't even dare to say anything. The scene was awkward for a while. There was no expression on Filch's face, and he said in a smooth tone, "Okay, Professor." After saying that, he turned around and left, and the little wizards automatically made way for him. "I will take care of Mr. Creevey with Madame Pomfrey. You all go to have dinner. Remember, you will stay in the dormitory all day tomorrow. The professors will carefully screen the castle on the other side. In addition, Mr. Potter, please come with me." With that said, she walked up to the little wizard who cast the spell, patted his arm, and said gently, "Okay, kid, go enjoy your dinner. The lamb chops tonight taste great." After saying that, Professor Sprout and Madame Pomfrey headed to the campus hospital with the stretcher floating in the air. The little wizards also began to walk to the restaurant, and from time to time they exchanged their views on Filch with their friends. Ryan pulled Hermione towards the dining room. Hogwarts was becoming increasingly unsafe. "By the way, are you going back this Christmas?" Ryan asked. "Of course, and there are so many things happening in Hogwarts now, I also want to go home and relax." Hermione nodded. The atmosphere in Hogwarts is getting more and more weird now, and the little wizards gather in groups wherever they go. They formed a team, fearing that they would be the next to be killed. Mr. Porter doesn't have many people willing to talk to him now. Everyone is afraid that they will get too close and become the next victim. Ron looked at Harry following Professor Sprout, gritted his teeth, and followed. It's good to go back, but don't talk about the things in school, otherwise your uncle and aunt won't let you go back to Hogwarts. Ryan said with a smile. Of course I know. Hermione rolled her eyes at Ryan. No parent is willing to send their children to such a dangerous school, even if it is a magic school, or magic schools are more dangerous. The two walked to the front of the restaurant, skillfully let go of their hands, and then entered the restaurant one after another. But when Ryan sat at the dining table, he clearly noticed that the little snakes in Slytherin seemed to be different today. Hello, Zell, I'm Brick Carlo. I've said hello to you before, remember? A young man with blonde hair and a somewhat pale face sat in front of Ryan with a warm look on his face. Said with a smile. Hello. Ryan searched his memory for a while and found that the handsome guy in front of him was the first little snake who came up to talk to him that night when he blackmailed Lucius. Excuse me, what's the matter? It seems that you and I don't have anything in common. Ryan smiled, but did not show any good expression towards Brick. After saying hello that day, today was the second time Brick talked to Ryan, so strictly speaking, the relationship between the two was not that good. Brick still maintained a smile and said, Actually, I heard that Ryan, you are quite good. Professor Lockhart is about to hold a dueling club, so I thought I could take advantage of the last moment to ask you for advice. Although I don't mind, it would be a bit embarrassing to be easily defeated on the duel stage. You're right, Ryan, so count us two as well. At some unknown time, Kess and Beaver also came to Ryan's side. Ryan raised his head and looked at the Gryffindor restaurant, and found that Hermione was also surrounded by many young wizards, who seemed to be asking Hermione to teach them. And this is not only true for Slytherin and Gryffindor, but also for Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. The powerful young wizards in each college are surrounded by many young wizards. But soon, the noise in the restaurant became quieter. Harry Potter walked through the door, followed by Ron Weasley. Harry took a step forward, and the little wizard beside him quickly sat forward to make way for him. If it was normal, Harry might say thank you. But at this time, he had just been questioned by several deans. This was the second time he had been questioned since the beginning of the school year. Although he hated Colin, when he saw Colin lying on the ground after being petrified, he suddenly felt a little regretful towards Colin. Harry walked over to an open seat and sat down. The surrounding little wizards immediately spread to both sides, and a vacuum area was instantly formed in the middle. Harry looked around and licked his lips a few times, but still couldn't speak. I'm really not a murderer. Harry thought to himself. I believe you, Harry, you must not be the murderer. Ron sat next to Harry and patted Harry on the shoulder. Thank you, Ron. Harry's voice was choked. At the same time, Ryan thought for a while and agreed to the request of the three people in front of him. Of course, there is a price. These young men are very rich, especially Brick, who is the heir to the Carlo family. Chapter 136. Early the next morning, Ryan sat up from the bed, washed up as usual and prepared to go to the restaurant for dinner, only to realize that the Slytherin common room was full of little wizards today. Oh, I need to stay in the dormitory all day today. Ryan shook his head and said. Ryan? Come on, try today's breakfast. The grilled red sausage is delicious. After noticing Ryan coming out, Kess yelled, attracting the attention of the snakes. But no one said anything now. After a year, the little snakes also acquiesced to Ryan's existence, but no one came up to talk to him. Gone were the comfortable sofas in the common room, replaced by the large dining table that had been used for Halloween night last semester. Ryan walked to the dining table and sat down. You guys got up so early? Ryan asked curiously. Normally, Max wouldn't get up so early. He would only get up when time was tight and run to the restaurant to eat. It's not just the professor's homework. It's a double copy. And since I'm in 5th grade, the professors thoughtfully added an extra copy. When he mentioned this, Kess immediately lost his mind to eat. With 3 times the usual homework, it is foreseeable that not only Saturday but also Sunday will be completely occupied by homework. No wonder the little wizards are not in a high mood today. This is really good. Ryan ate a grilled red sausage, which tasted really good. He forked another one onto his plate. Merlin, why do you say that? Bifer said, covering his head. What? Ryan was a little curious. Juana said the same thing before. You should study hard, otherwise wouldn't it be embarrassing if you don't even have an owl's certificate? My Merlin, I think not even having a certificate proves that this guy is also a genius in some way. Honestly, I think so too. While eating breakfast, Ryan chatted with Kess and Beaver. After simply filling his stomach, Ryan returned to his dormitory, while the rest of the little snakes were lying on the dining table doing homework. However, Ryan didn't deal with them, and his dormitory was spacious enough, so he simply finished his homework in his dormitory. On the other side, the professors also came to their respective areas and began to search slowly. The house elves are also constantly searching in secret. Whenever they find something suspicious, they will immediately report it to the professor in charge of patrolling. Haha, I've seen this before. When I encountered a snow monster in the Himalayas before, the local wizard once gave me such a souvenir. It's a pity that I accidentally lost it during an adventure. Lockhart said while holding a wooden amulet in his hand, and tisk-tisk from time to time. The house elf next to him looked at him with admiration. For the elves, wizards are the objects of their respect, and wizards like Lockhart, who have extremely high reputation and strength among the wizard community, need to be respected even more. Okay, let's go look for it again. By the way, please put this thing back where it belongs. I don't want a cute girl to come to me one day and cry, saying that the treasure she hid is missing. Lockhart smiled at the elf and handed over the small wooden sign in his hand. Yes, yes, Professor Lockhart. The house elf stared at Lockhart with a smile in front of him with his big eyes, feeling extremely happy. In addition to Lockhart, the other professors responsible for inspections also received more or less reports from the house elves. Professor McGonagall looked at the pile of hard-drawn fireworks, dung bombs, and other things piled in front of her with a gloomy look on her face, especially when she saw several trick-or-treat toys with the Weasley brothers logo among them. In fact, this pile of things was hidden here by Kess and Beaver, and it was also a batch purchased from Ryan before. Later, after the two decided to make a career, they felt that playing with these things was a bit frustrating, but they couldn't deal with them openly, so they had to find a place to hide them. Unexpectedly, Professor McGonagall found him today, and also threw a huge scapegoat to the Weasley brothers. Several other professors also discovered some small things more or less, but unfortunately, the things they found each time were just items hidden by the little wizards, and there was nothing suspicious at all. However, the professors were not discouraged. It was only a morning, and the search area was also very small. All the professors hope that they can search for strange and suspicious items, because that will mean that the root cause of the abnormality that occurred in Hogwarts during this period has been found. The worst-case scenario is that not a single thing is found, which means that they have to check the students' dormitories and even check the little wizard to see if they are parasitized. Professor Quirrell last year is a good example. Oh, God, I'm bored to death. In the common room, a little witch dropped her quill and lay on the parchment, wailing. I don't want to write anymore. By the way, Vivian, let's play wizard chess. Another little witch said with a smile, and then took out a chessboard from somewhere. Okay, but Tina, can you really beat me with your stinky chess game? Vivian raised her head and smoothed her scattered hair. Vivian. Tina pointed to her little face and looked at Vivian with a smile on her face. Vivian felt a little strange and took out her mirror. Ah! It turned out that Vivian had just laid down and accidentally pressed down on the handwriting that had not yet dried. Now there are a few more black words on her fair face. This is just what happens in the Slytherin common room, or rather in the common rooms of the 4 major houses. The little wizards have been doing homework in the dormitory all morning, and now they are very bored. Ah, it's lunchtime in 10 minutes. Forget it, let's take a rest, Kess. Beaver inserted the quill into the ink bottle and said to Kess. Okay, really, why is there so much homework? Kess shook his hand. I really envy the first graders. They have so little homework and still have time to play chess. When Bifur peeked at Wana, he found Vivian and Tina playing wizard chess, and couldn't help but sigh. You dislike too much homework just because you are too good at it. Ryan said behind them. What? Have you finished your homework? Kess was a little unconvinced. The two of them were studying very seriously now. Of course. Ryan nodded, receiving sighs from Box and Beaver. What the hell? Chapter 137. Okay, it's time for lunch. In fact, Ryan only came out after seeing the meal, otherwise he would still be passing notes to Hermione in the dormitory. Hayes is the messenger, and he has flown to Gryffindor Tower more than 10 times in one morning. Oh, it's indeed time for lunch. Kes looked at the golden dinner plate that suddenly appeared on the dining table and quickly put away his books. All the little wizards put away their books at a very fast speed. Everyone had been sitting at the table doing homework all morning, and they were already very hungry. In fact, everyone just wants to change things. This is the same as everyone always feeling that their room is not clean when they are studying at home. Today's lunch is still very rich, but the variety of desserts after the meal is much smaller. However, the little wizards thought of the previous notice from the school and knew that the house elves would assist the professors in screening the castle today, so they did not say anything. After finishing lunch, the little wizards lay down on the bed and took a nap. However, some young wizards were sitting in the common room chatting because there were roommates in the dormitory taking a nap. Kes and Beaver had been doing homework all morning, and now they couldn't bear it anymore and went back to the dormitory to sleep. Pace also went back to the owl shed to eat nuts. He had been tired all morning, so Ryan gave him a bag of owl nuts newly launched by the Ela Owl store. After eating this nut pie once, I will never eat the previous nuts again. In desperation, Ryan had to order again from the store. Ryan looked around and saw that the Slytherin common room was much quieter than in the morning. Even when talking to friends, they were all in soft voices and no one was making any noise. Forget it, I'm going to take a nap too. Ryan said. He actually doesn't have the habit of taking naps. He just goes to take a nap when he feels sleepy. If he is still energetic, he doesn't take a nap. It's completely up to him. When Ryan woke up, he found that the time had reached 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and there were already 2 or 3 pieces of paper accumulated on his desk. Goo goo. Pace came in through the ventilation duct, threw a note on the table, stood on the back of the chair and tilted his head to look at Ryan. Ah, Pace. Ryan got up from the bed and pressed his temples. His head felt a little painful from the long nap, and a sense of sleepiness was still plaguing his brain. This is a normal phenomenon and will go away after a while. Pace looked at Ryan, and then the bronze ring on his foot flashed, and an empty small cloth bag appeared in front of Ryan. Did you eat them all? Ryan couldn't help but raise his voice. After Pace heard this, he fluffed his feathers, raised his head, and looked squint forward 45 degrees upward. Hell, I'm not praising you. Ryan felt his head hurt even more. This is 2 squid per bag. If you eat like this, I will make you poor sooner or later. Although this is impossible, it must be said, otherwise what would Ryan do with so many owl nuts from the previous version in his pocket? Pace lowered his head and raised his little paws in embarrassment. He didn't expect that the nuts he liked to eat were so expensive. So, you have to eat the nuts from before. Now there are only 2 packs of nuts a week. Remember? Ryan sighed and said. Pace didn't realize the deceit in Ryan's words at all. He looked at Ryan with a worried look on his face, and then nodded heartily. After all, it would do no good to Ryan if he was destitute. When Ryan saw Pace nodding, he also nodded with satisfaction. The little owl must not be picky about food. And when the batch of nuts in his pocket is finished, he will buy all the latest owl nuts. Walking out of the dormitory door, a loud noise came. Ryan looked at the group of little snakes having fun in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little dull. Isn't the homework doubled? Isn't it triple the number in 5th grade? Why have they changed it now? Don't do your homework? Collective rebellion? Hey, Ryan, you're here. Kes said happily, holding a bottle of butterbeer in his left hand and his right hand hanging on Ryan's shoulder. What's going on? I remember you guys had a lot of homework. Ah, brother, don't talk about homework as soon as we meet. It will be very hurtful. Kes patted Ryan on the shoulder, took a sip of butterbeer, and continued, the culprit who harmed Hogwarts has been found. What? Ryan was a little surprised. Voldemort and the basilisk were found so easily. Ha ha ha, Professor Lockhart found a few suspicious gadgets, but what they were specifically, he said he wanted to wait until dinner in the restaurant to announce them. But he said he was sure that there was something wrong with Hogwarts. The roots are those things. Ryan, we are safe. Professor Sprout said that the mandrake will mature in a while. Haha, everything is going in a good direction. Kes laughed happily, and the other little snakes were also very happy. The little wizards were indeed a little on tenterhooks during this period, fearing that they would be the next to be petrified. Although there is a chance to be saved, who would want to be petrified and lie in the school hospital? Okay. Ryan nodded, but he had no confidence in Lockhart at all, and he didn't know why these little wizards believed in Lockhart so much. Hermione's few notes only said that something important had happened, but they didn't go into much detail. The small note was only that big, and the details couldn't be explained clearly. It would be better for Ryan to ask after he woke up. Hermione already knew through Pace that Ryan was sleeping. "Let's go, Ryan, join this carnival," Kes said and walked into the crowd. "Ryan." Beaver patted Ryan on the back. "Everyone's nerves are very tense during this period, and we have been stuck in the dormitory all day today, so everyone needs to relax. We all know that Professor Lockhart is unreliable, but we need a reason to vent." Ryan nodded, he naturally understood this. But he also breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that all the young wizards believed Lockhart. When the time came at night, the little wizards sat at their respective dining tables. No matter how busy the food was in front of them, they just looked at the staff table eagerly. The professors are also here tonight, and everyone is actually very curious about what caused this series of things. All eyes were on Lockhart. At this moment, Lockhart felt great. What he liked most was this feeling of being in the spotlight. He stood up, cleared his throat, stood up, looked at the little wizards below, and smiled. Chapter 138. In reality, Lockhart hid these items himself. As early as the day when the screening contract was decided, Professor McGonagall notified all professors and asked them to free up their Saturdays. Because various clubs formed by professors usually hold activities on weekends, informing them in advance allows them to adjust in advance. For example, Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Club adjusted its activity time from Saturday evening to Sunday morning. After Lockhart heard this, he went to the homes of several friends through the fireplace in the office, asked them to borrow some of their collection of dark magic items, the kind that no one else knew about, and let them have a good sleep. Sleep. The day before the screening, the professors received a notification from Professor McGonagall and learned about the area they would be responsible for inspecting. Lockhart hid these things in advance. Lockhart has recently discovered that his secret is about to be exposed, so he wants to make such a show to make himself mysterious again. What is real is virtual, and what is virtual is real. Everyone, I have also heard about what happened in the contract before, but fortunately, several injured young wizards were diagnosed by Madame Pomfrey and it was determined that they could be saved in the end. Before Lockhart could finish speaking, the little wizard below started making a fuss. So David is also saved. I know Madame Pomfrey's medical skills are very good. I broke my leg before, and just a bottle of potion made me recover, even though the potion was very difficult to drink. Last time I heard that David was difficult to recover, I was sad for a long time. Lockhart looked at the commotion of the little wizards in the audience, grinned, and showed a bright smile. "Okay, children, please be quiet," Lockhart shouted, pressing down with his hands. But I didn't suppress it. The individual voices of the little wizards were very small, but the combined voices of so many little wizards were loud. In addition, the restaurant was relatively empty and there were voices of ghosts nearby, so Lockhart's voice was completely lost in the sea of sound. "Please be quiet, thank you." Dumbledore's voice rang in the ears of every young wizard, making the restaurant instantly quiet. Lockhart naturally heard the sound. He turned around and smiled at Dumbledore on the staff table, and Dumbledore smiled back. But Snape looked at Lockhart as if he were watching a clown's performance. Professors McGonagall and Sprout had disgust on their faces. Professor Flitwick lowered his head, making it difficult to see the expression on his face. Professor Trelawney kept drinking sherry, and the other professors were whispering to each other, not talking to Lockhart at all. The smile on Lockhart's face faltered slightly, but he quickly adjusted himself. "Okay, kids, after a day of unremitting efforts, I finally found the culprit." The little wizards held their breath and concentrated, fearing that they would miss something. Ryan also looked at Lockhart intently. He felt that in such a big scene, at least Lockhart had to come up with something real. Otherwise, the seventh-year wizard would be able to expose his scam without the professors taking action. "Look, everyone, it's these three things." Lockhart raised the three strange-shaped objects in his hand. A skull pendant, the skull's eyes are still shining with green light, a blood-red lion plug-in, which can be placed on the top of the wand handle as a decoration, an emerald earring, which looks weird and strange. The little wizards were obviously shocked. These three things were obviously not good things at first sight. This pendant can control people's hearts, this plug-in can make your wand cast the petrification spell, and this earring can cast the disembodiment spell. My idea is this: a little wizard is bewitched by the pendant, and then he keeps using the petrification spell. Then he released the petrification spell to attack his enemies, and then used the disembodiment spell on his earrings to calmly leave the scene. After Lockhart finished speaking, he felt that his statement was extremely rigorous. After Ryan saw the three objects, he felt relieved. The straw bag was still the same straw bag. At first glance, these three items are not simple dark magic items. They are not things that can be found in Hogwarts at all. Then there is only one situation. This is brought in by a little wizard from outside. But then again, this thing is not something ordinary people can come up with. But the little wizards didn't think so much. They had already gathered together to discuss who had enmity with David and Colin. Mrs. Norris was not part of the discussion at all, and the entire Hogwarts witches and wizards disliked the cat and its owner. If Mrs. Norris is considered, then the whole of Hogwarts is a suspect. While everyone was discussing, they kept moving towards the Slytherin table. After a while, the young wizards who knew what they were talking about said the preciousness of the three items, and the young wizards also understood that only pure-blood families could get these things. Ryan, who do you think it could be? Kess's face was a little solemn. Now Slytherin's reputation would be even worse among the other three houses. Although they didn't care, this matter was different now. Attacked classmates and used dark magic items. Nowadays, the Ministry of Magic is very strict in checking dark magic items. If you take it out and use it now, wouldn't you hit the muzzle yourself? I think what Professor Lockhart said is very problematic. Ryan said quietly, the petrification spell released by that plug-in is not something that even Professor Dumbledore cannot break. What? Kess was startled. You mean, Professor Lockhart is cheating? You have been taking the class for almost a semester. Don't you think that the strength shown by this professor is somewhat inconsistent with what is written in his book? Although he can find excuses every time, he is not a professor who always pulls the strings like this. The look of a wizard with lots of adventures. Actually, I had my doubts, but everyone always said he was very powerful. Kess, a person can achieve something only by firming up his own beliefs. You can't believe what others say. We are wizards, even if 1 + 1 = 2, we can also say 1 + 1 = 3, as long as you are strong enough. I know, Ryan. Kess nodded, knowing that Ryan was right. Even though Dumbledore is sitting on the faculty bench and smiling kindly, the old man can ask Fudge to step down at any time if he wants. Some of the little wizards were convinced of the result, while others had objections. There was a quarrel in the restaurant for a while. Lockhart smiled slightly, turned around and placed the thing in front of Dumbledore. Mr. Principal, how do you think this should be handled? Lockhart, what I want to say is that my strength is not bad enough to break a petrification spell. Dumbledore criticized mercilessly. Chapter 139. Lockhart's face stiffened. He didn't expect the headmaster to be so unkind. Ahem, maybe I thought wrong. What happened in the castle before was too terrifying, so I was a little anxious. Lockhart said quickly. Dumbledore nodded and said nothing more. The corners of Snape's lips curled up inadvertently, and it was obvious that he was in a good mood. Okay, children, please be quiet. Dumbledore stood up and said, unfortunately, these three dark magic items found by Professor Lockhart are not the culprits, so please use the following days to, if you find any strange phenomenon, please report it to the professor in time. Dumbledore paused, glanced at Harry and the Weasley twins, and continued, next, there will be a professor responsible for night patrol every night. So we also invite some students to find the real murderer before now, don't go out for night walks at will. Harry's head lowered. He had just seen Dumbledore glance at him, and recently he often used the invisibility cloak to wander around. The Weasley brothers applauded each other playfully, looking somewhat glorious. Okay, kids, no matter how difficult it is, you still need to fill your stomach. As Dumbledore's voice fell, many delicacies appeared on the table. The little wizards were not polite and immediately reached out and started moving. It seemed that this large-scale screening had shocked the mastermind, and for the next 2 weeks, Hogwarts was peaceful. No one goes out at night because it is strictly prohibited. No one was causing trouble, and the Weasley twins were still cleaning the toilet because of the pile of toys collected by Professor McGonagall. Even Malfoy has stopped quarreling with Potter recently. Students in 3rd grade and above suddenly discovered that school life has become exactly the same as it was 2 years ago. It's Saturday, the week before Christmas, and the duel club that the little wizards have been waiting for finally reveals its face. This is an extremely spacious classroom, and it has been cast by the house elf with a traceless stretching spell. There is enough space for all the little wizards to sit, and there is enough open space for a stage. Candles burned on the surrounding walls, amplified by the reflectors behind them, illuminating the entire classroom. A crystal lamp is placed on the ceiling, emitting a gentle light to illuminate the entire classroom. Several protective spells were cast on the middle stage to prevent the little wizards watching the battle below from being accidentally injured. That night, the little wizards slowly walked into this classroom that had been renovated for a long time with excitement. Cool. Ron saw the huge stage the first time he walked in. It must be nice to stand up there and receive cheers. Harry was also a little moved. He could best understand the mood of receiving cheers. Of course, it would be great if I could stand on it and accept the cheers. Unfortunately, my wand has become like this now. As he said that, Ron took out his wand that was held together with tape. Magic wand. This was broken by the Whomping Willow at the beginning of school. The little wizards were seated according to the divisions of the academy, which corresponded to the front, back, left and right of the stage. After a while, Lockhart and Snape also walked in. Lockhart looked handsome in his purple robe. Snape was still wearing the same black robe with a sneer on his face. The young wizard who was familiar with Snape knew that Professor Snape was in a bad mood at the moment and someone was going to be in trouble. Haha, welcome everyone to the Duel Club. You can understand the charm of duel from here, and you can also learn more practical magic. By the way, these magics are the most practical magic that I have summarized after so many adventures. Don't miss it. Lockhart walked onto the stage, snapped his fingers, and the crystal lamp above his head cast a beam of light, illuminating Lockhart and reducing the light in other places. Of course, one slap can't make a difference, and a duel is also a matter of two people. So, let us welcome my assistant, Professor Snape. A beam of light descended from the sky, illuminating Snape and allowing the little wizards to see clearly Snape's sneer. Okay, let's stop talking nonsense and let Professor Snape and I have a real duel first. What do you think, Professor? As you wish, Snape said, then ignored him. Okay, then let me first introduce the rules of duel. Although the young wizards all knew the rules of dueling, it wouldn't hurt to hear Lockhart tell them again. 1, 2, 3. Expelliarmus. Lockhart shouted 3 and immediately released the disarming spell. But unfortunately, Snape just tilted his head and escaped. Expelliarmus. The same magic can have different powers in the hands of different people. Snape's disarming spell not only caused Lockhart's wand to fly into the air and fall into the chandelier, but he himself was also knocked out by the aftermath and fell onto the protective film created by the stage. The little wizards suddenly laughed, and some of them looked worried. Ahem, have you seen it? Children, don't think that the power of magic spells is small just because of its basic foundation. Sometimes these magic spells can also exert great power. Lockhart got up from the ground, rubbed his chest twice, and said, Ah, Professor Snape, our duel ends here. We must give the students some room to express themselves. Lockhart saw Snape raising his wand and waved his hand quickly. He just loves fame, and he is not really stupid. If he attacks again, he will probably be dead. Snape curled his lips in displeasure. He still had many tricks to use. Who knew Lockhart would be so helpless? But when the little wizards below heard this, they immediately became excited. Who doesn't want to show off his majesty on the stage? Then, Mr. Potter, would you like to come up? Lockhart glanced down the stage and immediately spotted Harry in the crowd. So. Malfoy. Similarly, Snape also noticed Malfoy, who was eager to try. After hearing that Lockhart chose Harry, he chose Malfoy without hesitation. Scarhead, don't cry when you lose later. Malfoy stood on the stage, wearing a dark green robe. Haha, at least I won't be pushed to the ground when I enter school. Harry also said sarcastically, not to be outdone. Then don't ask me to let go of my feet later. Malfoy was a little angry. This was a lifelong shame. There were already freshmen in the audience who didn't know the truth and began to ask the seniors around them. After hearing the answers, they looked at Ryan with reverence. Chapter 140. Malfoy's character is obvious to everyone. With his style, it would not be too easy to offend the freshmen in one semester. This also caused first-year wizards to feel disgusted whenever they saw Malfoy. Now they suddenly heard that someone beat Malfoy when they entered school, and they suddenly felt much better. After Malfoy and Harry took their positions, Lockhart began to act as referee. 1, 2, 3. Expelliarmus. As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, Malfoy immediately cast a disarming spell. Although Malfoy was a terrible person, he still had the teachings of the pure-blood family, especially in terms of magic. Without strong strength, it would be impossible to guard this huge family property. The spell was cast so quickly that before Harry could react, his wand was knocked down. There is a reason for this. In this life, Harry has devoted himself to Quidditch, and even his studies were only forced to pass by Professor McGonagall. As for practicing magic spells, that is even more impossible. Harry Potter was born a Quidditch man and died a Quidditch ghost. Draco Malfoy wins. Lockhart, who acted as the referee, spoke. Snape stood on the edge of the table and nodded with satisfaction. As long as Harry was embarrassed, he would be happy. Scarhead, are these the bold words you released? Malfoy laughed, his pale face becoming even paler under the light, and he looked without a trace of blood. Harry turned his head and looked at the wand he had dropped on the ground, gritted his teeth, picked it up and said to Malfoy, "Come again." "Okay, if you want to play, I'll play with you." Malfoy shook his body and smiled cynically. Lockhart looked at the two people in the stands, and then at the young wizards below the stage who had died down, and decided to let them continue. When the little wizards saw Harry's defeat, they suddenly realized that there could only be one winner among the two, which quickly extinguished their desire for expression. Everyone wants to be a winner, but unfortunately, where there are winners there are losers. 1, 2, 3. Tarantella. This time, it was Harry who took the lead, and Malfoy's body danced on the stage involuntarily. After all, he was born into a pure-blood noble. Malfoy's dancing skills were quite good. Coupled with the beam of light from the crystal lamp, it really felt like watching a dance in a theatre. Ha ha ha! The little wizards in the audience burst into laughter, Harry grinned, and the Weasley brothers whistled twice. The curse stops. Snape lifted the curse for Malfoy. His expression was ugly, and the little wizard in the audience wisely kept his mouth shut. Potter! Malfoy roared angrily, his pale face now turning red. Oolong came out of the hole. A black streak emerged from the tip of Malfoy's wand and fell to the ground. It looked around and kept spitting out snake letters. "Go, kill him!" Malfoy roared. The black snake followed Malfoy's instructions and swam forward slowly. Harry was a little scared. The snake in front of him reminded him of the time he was locked in the stairwell by Uncle Vernon when he returned to the amusement park. Hiss! A cold voice came from Harry's mouth. The classroom was unusually quiet at this moment, so everyone heard the sound from Harry's mouth. Snape slowly took his hands away from his chest and leaned forward, his eyes widened and he looked surprised. He recognized it, it was Parseltongue, and its last owner was Voldemort. "Stop the curse!" Snape hit the black snake on the ground with a curse. The black snake instantly began to burn like burning paper, and finally turned into fly ash and disappeared into the air. As soon as the black snake disappeared, Harry immediately stopped speaking Parseltongue. But even so, the little wizards still heard the voice. There were so many young wizards, many of whom liked to read miscellaneous books, and they immediately recognized that Harry was speaking the legendary Parseltongue. According to records, Slytherin was a Parseltongue. For a moment, the little wizards looked at Harry strangely. Harry had previously argued that he was not the heir, but now that his talent for Parseltongue was revealed, his previous defense seemed like a cover-up. "Ahem, you two are occupying the stage as long as you want, why don't you get off quickly and make some room for others?" Snape glanced at the two of them and said coldly. When Malfoy heard this, he glared at Harry with a provocative expression, and then walked off the stage. Goyle and Crabbe in the audience immediately made room for him, and then gathered around him fawningly, asking about the situation of the first battle, and kept saying that the second battle was just Harry's move in advance. Otherwise Master Malfoy could not have failed and so on. Malfoy raised his head and said, "Oh, I'll just say it, otherwise how could I lose?" Goyle and Crabbe nodded. On the other side, when Harry came to the audience, he also encountered the same situation. The little wizards around him all took a step back, revealing a large vacuum. Only Ron was still beside him. Ron kept praising Harry for the second battle, and said that Malfoy had taken action in advance in the first battle, otherwise Harry would not have lost. Harry felt a little happy after hearing this, thinking to himself that he also had a talent for dueling. "Okay, who wants to come up and try?" Lockhart shook his blonde hair and looked at the little wizard in the audience with a smile. After experiencing this battle, the little wizards gave up the idea of going on stage. Because they discovered that there was something worse than failing in a duel, and that was dancing on the stage. What's more, they might grow huge front teeth, or have a constant runny nose, or even spit out slugs from their mouths. The little wizards thought about the spells they had mastered, and sadly found that they were the most proficient in these spells. This also means that there is a high probability that their opponents have also mastered these magic spells. After thinking about the miserable situation after being tricked, the little wizards are even more afraid to go on stage. Lockhart asked 3 times in succession, but found that no little wizard came up. He looked at the Weasley twins, wanting the 2 living treasures to come up and demonstrate, but unfortunately, the twin brothers never fought among themselves. Okay, then our duel club can unfortunately end here. Lockhart stood on the stage, with no trace of regret on his smiling face. Snape had left long after Harry stepped down, and Ryan guessed that he went to the principal's office. Hermione was a little disappointed. Just now she wanted to go up and have a duel with Ryan to see his strength, but was stopped by Ryan's eyes.